Pledge this morning will be led by Liz Hirschberger, Gwen Olin, Deanne Betterman, and Tim Robertson from Charis Bible College, Woodland Park. Guests of Representative Mark Beasley.
Let us do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile. Representative Amabile is excused. Bacon.
Here.
Baisley. Benavides. Rep. Benavides is excused. Burnett. Byrd. Bockenfeld. Okay. Is excused. Basenecker. Bradfield, Caraveo, Carver, Catlin, Cutter, Doherty, Duran, Esgar, Exum, Froelich, Geithner, Gonzalez Gutierrez is present. Gray, Hanks, Herod,
Here.
Holtorf, Hooten, Representative Hooten is excused. Judah,
Here.
Kennedy, Kip, Larson, Lindsay,
Here.
Fontaine is here. Luck, Lynch, it's okay. McCluskey, McCormick, McKean, McLaughlin, Michelson Janae, Mullica is present. Neville, Ortiz, Pelton, Pico, Ransom, Rich, Ricks,
Present.
Roberts, Sandridge, Sirota, Snyder, Soper, Representative Soper is excused. Sullivan, Tipper, Titone, Valdez A. Rep Valdez A is excused. Valdez D. Van Beber, Van Winkle, Weissman, Will, Williams,
Here.
Woodrow. Representative Woodrow is excused. Woog, Young, and Mr. Speaker. Soper's here and Valdez A.
Is today the day? With 63 present, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Basenicker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After extensive lobbying in this chamber, I'm feeling pretty good about this motion. I move that the Journal of Wednesday, April 13, 2022 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative Basenicker. I've seen you working really hard. I also have faith. Members, the motion before us is the adoption of the motion before us is the adoption of the journal as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. I'm looking to our guests in the gallery for a little bit of help. They agree with me. The ayes have it. The motion's approved. Announcements and introductions. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you too, Representative Valdez.
We have quite a day in Energy and Environment, members, and so we are going to switch to the old state library. So we will meet 1:30 to here, 1348, 1345, 1218, and 1362. Again, we will meet in the old state library. Be there or be square.
Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Exciting news. NCSL Legislative Summit is here in Denver this summer from August 1st to 3rd. We should have about 5,000 attendees from across the nation, generating $12 million in economic development for the city. Also wanted to let you know that there are going to be two big events, one at Empower Field and at the Convention Center. And they are also in the building today if you all have any questions by the old Supreme Court. So feel free to go and talk to them today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Doherty. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If it's Thursday, it is finance, and we have a packed agenda. So today, again, of course, we will be meeting upon adjournment in Committee Room 112 in the basement. We will be hearing House Bill 1233 for action only, followed by House Bill 1119, House Bill 1310, and then concluding our hearing with House Bill 1320.
Representative Duran. And Representative Van Bember.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind members that the Colorado Children's Caucus will have its final session today from 12:15 to 1:15. Most of you should have gotten the Zoom link in your email. This session will be held virtually. This final session is on State of Youth panel. This session is a panel made up of young adults from 3 different organizations: Project Foster Power, Office of the Child's Representatives, Lived Experts Action Panel, and Colorado State University Fostering Success Program.
Representative Van Bember.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
Honored to serve with you too, Representative Van Bember.
Thank you. These folks will share about the work they are doing in their communities and the issues most important to them. We hope you will join us.
Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Business Affairs and Labor Committee, we're meeting this afternoon at 1:30. We have a slight update to the calendar. We are going to hear Senate Bill 130 and House Bill 1346. House Bill 1314 was scheduled but is being rescheduled at the sponsor's request, so just the 2 bills, 130 and 1346.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Education Committee. We have 2 bills up today, and they are on your calendar. Thank you.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 announcements this morning. First, if you're on the State Affairs Committee, we have a meeting upon adjournment to hear House Bill 1352 and LSBA. Secondly, the Public Investment Caucus is having a lunch and learn at noon today in HCR 109 to talk property tax. So if you're interested in learning more about how our property tax system works in Colorado, come to 109 at noon.
Thank you, Representative Kennedy. Representative Holtorf. You got a haircut. You got a haircut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for your leadership in this chamber. I want everybody to know that it's a very important day today. If you go out to eastern Colorado, what you see is tractors going through fields. We're starting to turn dirt. We're starting to prepare our seed beds for planting because it's springtime. For those of us that plant spring crops, we're already getting ready for that. But ladies and gentlemen, to your excitement and mine, today is National Gardening Day, which encourages gardeners and would-be gardeners to pick up shovels, plant seeds, and kick off a beautiful year of homegrown bounty. Whether you want to grow vegetables, fruits, flowers, houseplants, or any other such thing, National Gardening Day celebrates a satisfying pastime that you will enjoy for decades. And you can all be little farmers in your backyard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Holtorf. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we're all excited and ready to celebrate Good Friday tomorrow for those who do celebrate. I'll also note that Good Friday will be the 508th Friday since Alex Sullivan was murdered, and there's a lot more we can do to help honor his legacy, and we should keep doing it. Thank you.
Any further announcements or introductions? I believe we have some tributes. We doing some tributes? Representative D. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if I can get the Latino caucus down here.
And the Latino
Anybody else
caucus.
would like to join us on the Mestes case tribute? With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like for be read at length.
Thank you, Representative D. Valdez. Mr. Schiebel.
State of Colorado. The House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby commemorate the Maestas versus Schoen. The members of the Colorado General Assembly commemorate the 107th anniversary of Francisco Maestas versus George H. Schoen, one of the earliest known court victories involving Latinos against educational segregation. Maestas brought the suit against the Alamosa School District for not allowing his son Miguel to attend the school that was a shorter, safer walk from his home. Instead, Miguel was required to walk to the Mexican Preparatory School, which was a further distance across active railroad tracks, something his father, a railroad foreman, thought was dangerous. The school board had determined that the Mexican-American children, all of whom were U.S. citizens and could speak English, should attend the Mexican school to prepare them to join the high school as English speakers. Mr. Maestas was joined by other Hispanics as well as the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Denver and the Sociedad Protective de Trabajadores Unidos, and succeeded in winning the case against the school district. The court's decision required the school board and superintendent to admit children to the public school most convenient to their homes. The Colorado General Assembly recognizes and celebrates this long-forgotten and historic case on request of Representative Donald Valdez and Senator Cleve Simpson, given this 14th day of April 2022, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado, signed Stephen Fenberg, President of the Senate, and Alec Gurnett, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Schiebel. Representative D. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Latino caucus, but also to, this was goes back to 1914, the Mestes case with Francisco. The father, not only he wanted his children to be safe, but also get a good education. And there's going to be a memorial, or not a memorial, but a statue unveiling of the Mestes case, and it's called the Cruzando los Traques, crossing the tracks, which happened in Alamosa, of his son Miguel and his daughter. Not only is this one of the First Nation civil rights case in history, but it happened right here in Colorado, in the San Luis Valley. And that's why how important we must ensure education is for everyone, with equality and parity moving forward every single day. And with that, I thank you, and I thank the members, but also the family of the Mestes case for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative D. Valdez. Madam Speaker Pro Tem Benavides.
Thank you, members, and I want to thank Representative Valdez. It's not just doing this tribute, but he's been on the committee that has been working on this case and bringing it forward, and especially for the lawyers in the chamber. You know, we all know, and everyone knows, about Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which is thought to be the hallmark with respect to desegregation, but it is not. This is a long overlooked case. A very good friend of mine, Judge Martin Gonzalez, who'll be retiring, if he hasn't, the end of last month into this month at some point. He has worked for many years uncovering this information about this case and how important it was to Alamosa, to the state, and to the country. And so I hope many of you will join all of us this afternoon at 1 o'clock down on the first floor as they unveil a traveling statue that will have an ultimate final location this October in Alamosa. So I would really encourage all of you that want to know more about this to please join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Latino Caucus. Further announcements and introductions. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to, we've got a tribute for Alex Miller. If we could have that read.
Mr. Schiebel.
The House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby extends sincere condolences on the passing of Alex Miller. Born in 1999, Alexander Von Miller was a valued member of his community. He lived in Denver, Arvada, and Aurora, and graduated from Aurora's Gateway High School. He was a fierce advocate and was involved in numerous organizations that allowed him to lift up his voice to create positive change in the world. These included Project Foster Power, Elevating Connections, the Office of the Child's Representative, Chafee, and Shiloh House. Alex wanted to make a difference in the lives of young people in the foster care system, especially those with disabilities and mental health issues. He was instrumental in the passage of the Foster Youth Sibling Bill of Rights in 2019. Alex was an accomplished artist and poet, and he shared his talents whenever he had the opportunity. The members of the House of Representatives expressed their heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, and community on their tremendous loss. On request of Representatives Monica Duran, Tanya Van Beber, and Lindsay Doherty, given this 14th day of April 2022, State Capitol, Denver, signed Alec Garnett, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I first met Alex in 2019 when we were running the Foster Youth Sibling Bill. And you know how when you meet people, you instantly feel like you've known them all your life, and you can feel their passion and the love for what they do. That was Alex. He was just so giving and passionate about what he did, and I feel so lucky that I was able to work with him, to meet him, and for him to just have touched all of our lives in this special way. He will be with us in everything that we do, and so grateful and appreciative to him. I also want to acknowledge his family and friends who are up in the gallery, if we could welcome them here this morning.
Representative Van Beber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Leaders come from all kinds of places and spaces, and Alex was instrumental in building an incredible community beyond himself, despite the kinds of hardships and trials and tribulations that come with being one of our most vulnerable youth in the state of Colorado. From friends in his church to colleagues in the youth advocacy arena to current and former foster youth, he has helped give a voice to thousands and thousands of youth across the state in order for them to live a more successful life. His legacy will continue on in so many ways, including all of the youth advocates that he has inspired in order to continue to use their voices to create change.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Further announcements and introductions. Seeing none, the next order of business is third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Schiebel. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over Senate Bill 9 until Monday, April 18th.
Seeing no objection, Senate Bill 9 will be laid over until Monday, April 18th. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1120.
House Bill 1120 by Representatives Van Winkle and Neville, also Senators Woodward and Bridges, concerning the recreation of the school security disbursement program to provide funding for local education providers to implement school security improvements to prevent incidences of school violence.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1120 on third reading, final passage.
Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spent time last night and this morning thinking about this legislation. One sponsor called this the most important bill of the session, or maybe it was one of the most important bills of the session. And since we debated it for about 3.5 minutes, we had only four speakers, I thought maybe I should come down here and talk a little bit about school safety. Tempered glass, resiliency training, cameras, and SROs are only some of the tools that we have used to make our schools safer. They talked about the next bill, 1243, being the one that has the funding for it, and how this bill works in conjunction with that. And they talked about school safety programs and student behavioral health, and they spoke about suicides being the leading cause of death for children in the ages of 10 to 24. I supported a safe storage bill to prevent suicides here in Colorado. Firearms account for 52.83% of all suicides. And since we passed that bill, and to paraphrase another comment that was made down here, I can't understand why everybody didn't vote in favor of that bill. But since we did pass that bill, suicides in the state of Colorado have increased 51%. We have moved from number 10 in the country to number 7 in the country since that time. During the discussion, we spoke about school shootings. I supported the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, whose task it is to work with our community and to get gun locks, safe storage training, and other life-saving materials to our community. 82% of school shooters get a loaded, unsecured firearm from their home. And we all know that not all school shooters are in the school. We know about Platte Canyon, where a citizen entered the school armed. We know about former students came back to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and Sandy Hook to carry out their massacres. That's why I supported legislation that would temporarily remove a firearm from someone who is believed to be of danger to themselves or others in House Bill 191177. Citizens of Colorado know it takes more than a lock on the door or a camera at the window to make our schools safer. I ask that they reach out and help with all the actions that we can take to make our schools safe. I support House Bill 1120 and ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1120? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1120 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Herod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Herod votes yes. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1120 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Judah, co-sponsor. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1243.
House Bill 1243 by Representatives Exum and Van Winkle, also Senators Colker and Hendrickson, concerning programs that provide funding to improve school safety and in connection therewith make an appropriation.
Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1243 on third reading, final passage.
Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I don't normally come down on thirds. Okay, occasionally I do. No, but we had a rather robust debate, I think, yesterday, but I wanted to flag some things for the chamber that I find to be of significant importance, specifically within the reference to some of the arguments I was making yesterday around parental notification. If you'll recall, I attempted to run a couple of amendments yesterday, L004, L005, and L008. And the importance of that, I think, can help be demonstrated through a bit of the report. 1243 talks about a report. I think it's section 3 in the bill. The report is generated twice a month. The first report is out. This is from January of 2022, and it talks pretty specifically about the age breakdowns of the students. And so, if you'll recall from yesterday, I did reference the role of the iMatter program and how, if you're 11 or younger, parental notification is built into the system. It is a requirement. It is very much a piece of the iMatter program. However, 12 and up, that is certainly not the case, even though there is an attempt to present that is not necessarily the case. So if you look at the report, approximately 318 kids, according to the report, are 11 and younger. For those that are 12 and older, again, this pool here, these are the students that don't necessarily need to have mom and dad or their legal guardian involved, 599. So approximately times 2 of the below 11. So I think that's pretty significant to understand the breakdown between 11 and younger and 12 and older. So twice the amount of students in that case. Of those students, females about 491, males 352, and non-binary third gender, according to the report, 43. If you look at the clinicians that make up and actually provide services through the iMatter program, it is rather robust, and the report indicates participating clinicians' specialties are comprehensive, which is vital to the clinical efficacy of the program. 64 have expertise in treating depression, 54 in trauma post-traumatic stress disorder, 31 in offering culturally competent therapy, 29 in LGBTQ plus issues, 27 in gender-affirming care, and 20 in racial identity. So you can see just some of the areas of concern that students may have as they look to support through the iMatter program. And the reason I bring this all up is because, if you'll recall, I just said about twice the number of students below 11 are the ones where the parent isn't necessarily involved or even aware that their child may be going through something. And so if you took any time to go through the iMatter portal, which was set up in 2021, I believe, you will see that it asks for specific information. It asks for the student's name, last name, date of birth. It asks for the gender. It asks for preferred pronouns. And then this is an email, so there's a contact information. But then where it differs between the 11 and the 12-year-old is that the 11-year-old is required to input information in and around parental information. However, the 12-year-old is most certainly not. And to further drive this point, on the side of the portal on the web screen, and I have some screenshots here that I'm happy to show you, it does say providing your parent or guardian's name and contact information is optional if you are 12 or older. And I know that there was some comments yesterday that might not necessarily be the case, but according to the portal, it most certainly is. If you continue on, there is a frequently asked page that comes up with what allows for consent of treatment, and there are 5 different categories. So if the youth is 12 or older, the parent does not need to be involved. If the youth is under the age of 12, and this is very specific, under the age of 12, both parents, married, divorced, separated, it goes on. Then it also says if one parent in this category is only needed if the youth is, again, under the age of 12. And that one parent who has court documentation and so on and so forth. And this continues 5 times on this page where it delineates the age ranges between 12 and 11. I referenced yesterday the idea at the bottom of one of these pages where it said if you're under 12, then your insurance information or your insurance company is not necessarily contacted or billed for the first 6 sessions. So if you look at the iMatter portal, no less than 7 times. So not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times, not just 4 times. not just 5 times or 6 times, but 7 times, and no less than 7 times, does the portal convey that if you are 12 or older, the parents do not need to be involved. The importance the reason I bring this up is because I think that there is a significant role that parents play, especially when it comes to issues that our youth are facing. And here in policy, we're attempting to appropriate $6 million to further round out this program, but at the same point saying that the parent doesn't necessarily have to be a part of that. And so that brings me grave concern, especially when we know that in the times of COVID, our own governor message to the people of Colorado that parents don't necessarily need to be informed if a student wants to get a vaccine. There is a tendency within government to exclude parents, and I find that to be concerning because parents are the ones that oftentimes are best equipped, in the best position to understand what is going on, and then being able to help, if not channel them towards good resources or others. That role is pretty significant. You know, I have friends and family that have sought therapy and such, and more often than not, they come back and they say, yeah, I had my first therapy session. I'm just not sure that this counselor is the right one. And yet we're creating it in policy and further creating in policy. Does a 12-year-old, is a 12-year-old going to know well? Is that a good therapist for them? The parent has a significant role when it comes to dealing with mental health. I understand what the sponsors are trying to do here, but I cannot support something that excludes the parents. And so I will be a no vote on 1243, specifically for the impact where it comes to identifying that parents are allowed to be a part of the process from 11 and younger, but may not necessarily be a part of the process for 12 and up. And the iPortal, like I said, the iMatter portal specifically acknowledges this no less than 7 times. And finally, I spoke to the department. I spoke to folks at the department, and they agree with my assessment. There is no requirement that at 12 or older, that the parents be informed or be involved. And that's what I was attempting to do yesterday, was bring harmony between the 11 and younger and the 12 and up. And so I will be a no vote on 1243, and I appreciate your time.
Representative Michelson Janae.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is actually the very first time that I've ever come up and talked on thirds. And it was so exciting for me to hear the wonderful program that my colleague just told you about and all the incredible help that is happening for our children here in Colorado. Our colleague came up and talked about school safety. My colleague and I served on the School Safety Interim Committee. What did we learn? We learned that all of the shooters in the cases that we studied had toxic stress. Do you know what the answer for toxic stress is? Therapy. Therapy is a very good answer for toxic stress. But I don't know how many of you have tried to get a therapist for your kid. It is darn near impossible. We broke the mold. We figured out how to take away all of the barriers to getting access to therapy for kids in Colorado. This is something to celebrate. It is a massive achievement. We said, no matter what you look like, how much money or education you have, how old you are, if your family is with you, and sometimes your family is not with you. We have to recognize that all of our children don't have an ideal family situation. It's not the reality. It's not. Some of our kids need help without parents, but you know what? We said, you can get onto this website. And this website, by the way, massively tested, worked on with kids, physicians involved, a major process. This bill changes 0 laws about consent. 0. It has nothing to do with consent. I was listening from home yesterday because I was sick. I was devastated that I was sick yesterday and unable to answer some of the questions. This program serves our kids in a time of crisis. And guess what? they don't have to be in crisis to use the program because they have the crisis hotline, which you could call at any time, no matter how old you are. And I encourage you, if you need help emergently, you should text TALK to 38255. Text TALK. You'll get help immediately. But if you want therapy because you're struggling, because school is hard, because life is hard, because hormones are hard, because COVID is hard, because losing all of your income because of a massive global pandemic is hard, we're going to answer that door for you. We're going to say, answer these 16 questions, and I do encourage you to go on and check it out. Put test in the name so they know who you are. Answer the 16 questions, and depending on your answers, you'll get those one of three suggestions. One being, hey, we think you're doing great. Here are some recommendations for approved, recommended, solid, safe reading so you can continue to keep safe because you're doing great. The second might be, we think you're in crisis. We're connecting you to the crisis hotline now. Now. The third, here are all of the therapists that we have. Read their bios, see who sounds interesting to you, and pick one of them to start a therapeutic interaction. Are parents involved? I have parents throughout the state that stop me in the grocery store to thank me because they had never been able to get their kids help before. Don't be misled. Parents are involved. Parents are involved in their kids' lives. They know when they need therapy. Is every family perfect? No. Do those kids deserve access to care? Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to read you because I'm so proud of this program and what it has done. Adams County, 195 appointments. Alamosa County, 4 appointments. Arapahoe County, 195 appointments. Baca County, 1 appointment. Boulder County, 123. Broomfield County, 38. Chaffee County, 3. Clear Creek County, 3. Custer County, 2. Denver County, 216. Douglas County, 172. Eagle County, 5. El Paso County, 227. Elbert County, 5. Fremont County, 5. Garfield County, 19. Gilpin County, 3. Grand County, 7. Gunnison County, 3. Hinesdale County, 1. Jefferson County, 245. Kit Carson County, 2. La Plata County, 8. Lake County, 4. Larimer County, 160. 160 in Larimer County. Los Animas County, 6. Logan County, 2. Mesa County, 35. Moffett County, 1. Montezuma County, 2. Montrose County, 2. Morgan County, 6. Ray County, 3. Park County, 5. Phillips County, 7. Pitkin County, 2. Prowers County, 6. Pueblo County, 51. Rio Blanco County, 1. Rio Grande County, 1. Routt County, 8. Saguache County, 2. San Miguel County, 1. Sedgwick County, 2. Summit County, 5. Teller County, 2. Washington County, 1. Weld County, 126. Yuma County, 2. We set out to make therapy available to our kids no matter where they are and to our families no matter where they are, and we achieved success. That's 48 out of 64 counties. 48. We are reaching into the depths of our state, into the beautiful rural areas of our state, and we're saying we're going to bring the therapy to you. And yes, it very specifically, by the way, says, please include your parent, or however the wording is, if you would like to include your parent, because of that man over there who said we need to make sure there is an easy way to include parents in this process. It's simple. And you don't have to have any insurance. Any insurance. There was, when my colleague was reading the options, one of them was none. No insurance, please include your parent. This is a solid program that is saving lives in our state right now. Please Please support the continuation. Our children deserve it.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1243? Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to be super brief. I think this conversation is not about the efficacy of a program that's there. I think it's the default. Is the default that we set up a program where we define ages where almost all of us would say, and I find myself in this chamber sometimes wrestling with this, that we say in one word that the cerebral cortex is not fully developed until 25 and therefore there can't be the dependence on those decisions until 25. But yet in another breath we say we're going to let 12-year-olds make their own mental health decisions. Do I agree with all of that? Not necessarily. But do I also acknowledge that not every home is the same? Absolutely. What I'm concerned with is anytime we have a default that takes parents out of the mix, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it forces parents out of the mix. That's the piece of this that I don't want to be misunderstood on. It doesn't force parents out of the mix. What it does is it says the default is that you can go get treatment on your own, and then it's up to a 12-year-old kid to tell their parents whether or not they're getting treatment that their parents probably ought to know about. And honestly, I think that's the thing that we all ought to wrestle with, is in some of this legislation that we have passed in the past that says this is the way the law is. This doesn't establish new legislation for that purpose, but what it does is it enhances it. I think the iMatter program is a good program. I also think that we ought to wrestle with this question and find the best way to get parents involved in every case where it is beneficial to the kid, and the default should be how do we best do that first. Thank you.
I'll go to you, Representative Van Winkle, in 1 second. I've been a little lenient this morning on all these discussions on all the bills on third reading. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I'm just recognizing that I'm being pretty lenient in where all the discussions have been going. Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do appreciate all the comments, especially about parental involvement, because that's incredibly important to families in Colorado. But to be clear, and as the Speaker somewhat referenced to, we're talking about something that's not in this bill. House Bill 1243, School Security and Behavioral Health Service Funding, does not make any changes to existing laws as it relates to the interaction between a mental health care professional, a minor, a parent, or a legal guardian. That doesn't change that law at all. It is a software, it is a technology platform that matches that child who is possibly and likely, if they're using that program, at a breaking point in seriously considering harming themselves or harming others as soon as possible to a healthcare professional that can get that child help and keep them from harming themselves or harming others. There's actually a lot more in the bill than just the iMatter program. There's two other very important programs that fund a slew of things that keep our kids safe when they head off to school every morning, including $6 million, which was referenced, that is for Tier 1, absolutely urgent and needed security upgrades to our schools, that our schools are saying, this is a serious problem, we need help to fund this, locks on these doors or windows that have been broken or something like that. I urge a yes vote on this bill because no matter what you think about parental consent laws, and I do think we need to address that as a body, and we probably need to find a way, we could not find a way within this bill to balance that out between perhaps tying the hands of a mental health care professional who is right on that front lines and responding to that child who is at a breaking point. So I urge a yes vote on 1243. There's an awful lot of good in this bill, and we certainly have the time and need to address parental consent when it comes to all health care for minors, but this isn't the time or place. Let's fund these very good programs, these several good, very important things for our kids' safety so that when a kid goes to school, they don't have to worry about their safety. They can just be a kid and their parents don't need to live in fear.
Representative Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, every time there's a tragic incident, I often get frustrated because a lot of folks in the media and different folks, they jump to a conclusion that I really dislike. In front of us now, we have a bill that actually funds things that will actually help solve these problems that we have in a way that we should all be able to agree on, non-controversial ways, in a way that, as the saying goes, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And that's what this bill does. I urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1243? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1243 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. Please close the machine. With 58 aye votes, 6 no votes, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1243 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Judah, Lindsay, co-sponsored. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1296.
House Bill 1296 by Representatives Malika and Van Winkle, also Senator Priola, concerning the definition of a nursing home for purposes of the residential real property classification.
Oh, and before we move on, Representative Harrod, we have you for a co-sponsor on House Bill 1243. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if this is the right terminology, but I move the double hat trick, Van Winkle hat trick, House Bill 1296 on third reading, final passage.
I'm not sure that is the right motion. Is there any further discussion on the question before us? Is the adoption of House Bill 1296 on third reading and final passage. Congratulations to Representative Van Winkle for the hat trick, assuming this passes. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
You don't mind,
Yes.
so you do this through SAP, right?
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Where is it?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. Please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1296 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1010 as amended, 1083 as amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole, the favorable recommendation. Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1215 as amended, 1350 as amended, Senate Bill 127 be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Committee on Energy and Environment, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1140 be postponed indefinitely. Senate Bill 7 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. Committee on Health and Insurance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1284 as amended, 1325 as amended, be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. House Bill 1285 be amended as followed, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1319, Senate Bill 49 as amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Transportation and Local Government, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1137 as amended, 1301 is amended to be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. House Bill 1356 be amended as followed, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations.
Conference committee reports.
To the President of the Senate and the
committee
Speaker.
reports will be printed in the journal. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the following bills be made special orders on Thursday, April 14th. House Bill 1304, House Bill 1317, House Bill 1309, House Bill 1010, House Bill 1083, HCR 1005, House Bill 1347, Senate Bill 157, Senate Bill 49, House Bill 1301.
What time, Madam Majority Leader?
We'll go with 9:56 a.m.
Seeing no objection, the bills laid out by the Majority Leader will be made special orders at 9:56 on Thursday, April 14th. Representative Basenecker. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Basenecker will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for a bill to be read at length. I know, I sense the disappointment already. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader, and the coat rule is relaxed.
And also with you.
Mr. Shebo, please read the title of House Bill 1304.
House Bill 1304 by Representatives Roberts and Bradfield, also Senators Coleman and Gonzalez, concerning state grants for investments in affordable housing at the local level and in connection therewith, creating the Local Investments in Transformational Affordable Housing Grant Program and the Infrastructure and Strong Communities Grant Program to invest in infill infrastructure projects that support affordable housing.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1304, the Transportation and Local Government Committee Report, and the Appropriations Committee Report.
Thank you, Representative Roberts. To the Appropriations Report.
In the Appropriations Committee, they allocated the appropriation to administer this program. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report passes. To the Transportation and Local Government Committee report, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two amendments to the committee report, so I'll start with I move L007 and ask that it be displayed.
Thank you. 1 second. We'll get that displayed. The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So L007 addresses what we believe would be an unintended consequence that we caught in between committee and today, where a municipality might be held to a county AMI classification that does not actually reflect their housing needs as agreed on in the compromise we made regarding AMI. So this allows municipalities to access the appeals process that we have already included in the bill. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007 to the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L008 to the committee report.
1 second, we'll get that properly displayed. The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members, L008 takes a good program in the Strong Communities program that we have in this bill and adds a call out to early childhood and education services that they would also be eligible to receive some of these infrastructure dollars for their programs. This amendment is important for both of our districts, I think everybody's district, to help support early childhood education and child care. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008 to the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the appropriations report, to the transportation report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll talk more about the overall bill, but we did make some, in a second, but we did make some important changes in the Transportation Committee. Specifically, I wanted to call out that we made a dedication to all parts of the state, not just that this funding will be allocated to Colorado, but we're making sure that every corner of the state will get their fair share of housing dollars because we know the housing crisis is impacting every community. There is a dedicated 50-50 split in the amendments we did into the Transportation and Local Government Committee between our metro areas and our rural areas, ensuring that our rural and rural resort communities get their fair share of funding as well. We made a few other amendments that I'll discuss when we talk about the rest of the bill, but I'll leave it there for now and ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Transportation and Local Government Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Transportation and Local Government Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Roberts.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few amendments to the bill now that we're at the bill, so I move L009.
All right, 1 second. The amendment is before us and properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment increases flexibility under the Strong Communities Grant Program to give a wider array of options for the best land use practices, things like infill, zoning reform, and other building codes that can be modified to incentivize affordable housing. We are making a few adjustments in this amendment to make sure that that program is properly supported. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just real quick, I'm reading it here for the first time, and I see at the bottom there's $28 million of general fund. $28 million from the general fund. Is that in addition to what's already in the bill, or is that among the $150 million in the bill?
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Representative Van Winkle. It's no additional funding. We're just moving the allocation around.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009 to House Bill 1304. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L011 and ask that it be displayed.
1 second. Great. The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a bill that is allocating our ARPA, our American Rescue Plan dollars. This amendment is a simple addition that makes sure we are complying with the ARPA guidelines from the federal government. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L011 to House Bill 1304. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my final amendment. I move L012 and ask that it be displayed.
I forgot about that.
Great. And that amendment is properly before us and displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this amendment is about making sure that all of Colorado is eligible for this program. This amendment makes changes to ensure that all parts of Colorado are eligible for the Strong Communities program, in addition to the grant program that's in the earlier part of the bill. So with that, I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L012 to House Bill 1304. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finally, we get to the bill, and this is really a great opportunity for Colorado. Granted, this is a use of the federal ARPA funds, and but it is, as Representative Roberts said, something that goes to every single corner, community, city, county in Colorado. There are two parts to this bill, and the first part is state grants, investments in local affordable housing. That helps to build more affordable housing, especially in cities and counties that desperately need it. And it's quick, and it will happen quickly if they want to apply for it, so that it's not a long time wait for money. The second half of the program, which is not half of the program, but it's the Strong Communities Grant Program, and it is basically to help local governments keep their infrastructure and maintenance costs efficient, transportation costs for residents, locating affordable housing near jobs and downtown business, health. Eligible recipients are local governments. I urge and I vote on this bill that is one-time spending, but will help many communities get something up and running that they haven't had the chance to before. Thank you.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I am so proud to be in front of you all presenting House Bill 1304 with my colleague, Representative Bradfield. And because of all the hard work, dedication, analysis of the Affordable Housing Transformational Task Force, and I want to thank them to help us put forth this historic bipartisan effort, an effort that will undoubtedly help lead to more Coloradans in every corner of the state having a safe, affordable, and welcoming place to call home. As chair of the Affordable Housing Transformational Task Force, I do need to take a moment and thank all of the legislators, the executive branch staff, and the housing experts from across the housing continuum that worked so hard all for many, many months, all last year. And I want to thank Representative Bradfield for her partnership and commitment to helping me turn one of the task force's most prioritized concepts into this piece of legislation before you today. This is a piece of legislation that will transform people's lives and help people get into affordable housing that they desperately need. I know that we all hear from our constituents just how expensive and difficult it is to attain housing within every district that we represent. It's a concern and conversation which has unfortunately become the norm for all of us, particularly over the last few years. And what this bill reflects is a new affordable housing grant program that will be housed in the Division of Local Affairs. And it will set forth a process in which local governments, nonprofits, public-private partnerships, and others can apply to receive state capital to get their affordable housing projects off the ground. And priority will be given to projects that have already invested resources, that have promising local partnerships, and are set up to build and maintain affordable housing as quickly as possible. The bill also creates incentives for local communities to rethink their zoning and building codes in ways that incentivize affordable housing development and reduce the barriers to getting people housed in smart, efficient, and affordable ways and near where they work as the vital members of our community, as nurses, as law enforcement officers, as teachers, and as part of our workforce that power our small businesses. Finally, I would like to note that through much negotiation hard work, we have crafted this bill in a way that it means that all of Colorado will benefit. In this bill, as you've heard, Rep. Bradfield and I have guaranteed funds for rural and rural resort communities, and it comes with the flexibility to help those areas based on their unique area median income circumstances. Because we know that our rural and mountain communities are feeling the housing crunch very acutely, just as much or even more than our metro areas. This bill really does benefit all of Colorado with an important and vital problem that we're facing, and I'm looking forward to seeing it fund and promote good projects supported in all four corners of our state. So with that, I'd ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1304? Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsors. I know intentions are very well-meaning, and we have two very good bill sponsors here. The issue here is actually a bit of a bigger issue, and it's the inflation hitting the people of Colorado right now. How this bill works is essentially, well, I guess how any bill with a lot of money in it works from the federal government, is the taxpayers of Colorado who are preparing their taxes actually this very week and this weekend pay their taxes to the federal government. The federal government takes a portion of that, in this case it's millions of dollars, to hire federal employees to oversee programs like ARPA and the money coming to the state of Colorado. And then the state of Colorado, and then they send that money, those FTEs at the federal level, they take their cut, they send it to the people, to the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado, in this case, will be taking $7.5 million of that taxpayer money to hire new FTEs and to administer the program. And then that money will go to local governments, and local governments will hire full-time employees that will be there to administer the program and the money coming from the state. And then finally, the money will be distributed out for some very good and well-meaning things that will help the people of Colorado, but also a large portion of this money will go to increasing the number of eviction lawyers that are available, which increases lawsuits. It will go to REIT owners and investors, and it will go to developers. I know there's a portion of the bill that is guaranteeing money to rural and rural resort towns. So, you know, the rural resort towns of the mountain towns, which is very important. But it also gives high density bonuses to the city and county of Denver so they can build taller and on smaller pieces of land. So at a time when essentially 80% of all U.S. currency has been printed in just the last 2 years, and Coloradans are struggling and trying to pay their taxes actually this very week to the federal government, I would urge a no vote on this bill. $150 million doesn't seem like a tremendous amount when you look at the entire federal government, but it is part of the problem contributing to inflation facing the people of Colorado. Thank you.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Van Winkle, and I respect your thoughts and your comments about inflationary pressures and fiscal responsibility. The thing about this bill is allocating money that we received from the federal government. We didn't necessarily ask for it, but we were given this opportunity, and we decided as a body last year to set aside some of that funding for affordable housing. I think what we've done through the months of work with the Affordable Housing Task Force is come up with careful, fiscally responsible solutions to recommendations on how to spend this money. I just want to sort of frame and remind folks what this money will go to. This will go to organizations like Habitat for Humanity or your local housing authority that is trying to build workforce housing in your community but needs that little extra capital to get that project off the ground. But at the end of the day, this means that people who want to live in Colorado and are really struggling right now to find an affordable place to call home can have an opportunity to own a home or to rent a place for them and their families. This is about housing people. This is about making sure that people can live somewhere close to where they work and not have to commute for hours a day just to live somewhere affordable. This is a one-time opportunity that we've received from the American Rescue Plan. I think this is a smart, prudent way to invest these dollars and help future generations of Coloradans.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to the bill, and I want to kind of talk a little bit about why. I was part of the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I'm going to say that there's a lot of good in this bill, in the way it is structured and the way it is intended to help nonprofits and other groups to try to build additional housing. The fact is that
And
we do
Representative
need-
Pico, I'm just going to pause you for 1 second because members, it's getting a little loud on the floor. Representative Pico is sharing some just vital remarks in relation to this bill. We want to make sure that we can hear those things, and so thanks for your respect in listening to his remarks alongside me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, there's a lot of good ideas in this bill. There are a lot of good ways to spend funds to expand housing stock. And that was one of the big things that we came out of the Affordable Housing Task Force was a general consensus, the agreement by almost everybody there, that if you really want to lower housing prices, you build more. And this bill does do that. It does, however, as relayed by Representative Van Winkle, add an awful lot of overhead to every level that does that. And it also is spending the ARPA dollars, which are flat out printed dollars. It's inflationary. It's what is causing the inflation to run rampant. It is escalating rapidly as we speak. The inflation is up to 8.5% of the CPI. The producer price index is up to 10.2, which is escalating rapidly. We are going to face increasing inflationary pressures and dumping essentially, in this case, 150, but the overall $450 million into an already overheated housing market where the suppliers are having difficulty meeting the supply demand. We're just going to add more funds to that. That is inflationary pressure. And it will backfire in many ways to do this. So again, there's a lot of really good ideas within the bill. There's a lot of good programs in there. Habitat for Humanity, which was just mentioned, I think is one of the stellar performers. But this is inflationary money to drop into it. It's printed dollars. It's just adding to the problem that we already have across the country and across the state. And I reluctantly say, let's not spend this money.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1304? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1304 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1304 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1317.
House Bill 1317 by Representative Tipper concerning restrictive employment agreements.
Representative Tipper, to the Judiciary Report. Oh, sorry. You need to move it first. I'll wait.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go.
I move House Bill 1317 and the Judiciary Report.
Thank you, Representative Tipper. To the Judiciary Report.
Thank you, and I'll discuss the Judiciary Report, but I am going to move some amendments that go to the committee report, so I'll also go there. So to start, in Judiciary, we made several amendments that were suggested and negotiated with the business community to kind of improve the language and simplify it. I'll talk about the overarching goals of the bill, but none of those amendments were opposed. And with that, I will move Amendment L009 to the House Judiciary Report.
1 second, we'll get that displayed.
And I ask that it be displayed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, the amendment is properly before us and displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for broader context, what this bill does is It's really a response to what I believe are some very anti-competitive practices that restrain entrepreneurship, that restrain the growth of talent and the free flow of talent in the state. In existing law, which is found at section 8.2.113 of the statutes, we have kind of a broad prohibition, what looks like a broad prohibition on non-compete provisions in employment contracts that says non-competes are unenforceable, except in 4 instances. Those 4 exceptions, 2 of those exceptions really swallow that prohibition. And it makes it so that non-competes are pretty routinely put into employment agreements, often without an individual's knowledge, often offered once the individual shows up on day 1 to work. They've already quit their other job. They don't have a lot of choice. Some folks are low-wage earners, and they have these provisions in place. And so what the underlying bill does is it narrows these provisions to limit these restraints to situations that really make sense, that really actually protect legitimate business interests and do the least harm possible to our workforce, to businesses that are trying to recruit talent, to talent that's trying to move. What's interesting about this is that when we look at the expansion of Silicon Valley and really the thriving of Silicon Valley, one of the sort of reasons or the speculation behind it, and the reason is at the time that Silicon Valley took off, the East Coast also had a burgeoning tech sector. But the East Coast had very restrictive employment agreements that they would allow. Silicon Valley did not. And so they look at 2 similar situated areas in terms of talent and brain trust, and they saw that Silicon Valley took off and that the East Coast did not. So I would suggest, and the data is really strong, that non-competes, like I said, stifle innovation. So in committee, one of the things that we worked on is, I said that that my bill, the underlying bill, narrows the allowable uses for non-competes. And the bright line that I propose is that low-wage workers and lower wage should not be subjected to non-competes, period. And I'll talk about the abusive practices related to lower wage workers. So we created a threshold that CDLE has, it's called a highly compensated employee, and said if you earn above that, you can be subjected to non-competes. That's fair, and the rationale behind that is your higher compensated employees are more likely to be close to the business insider information. And we say, that makes sense. But for your low-wage workers, and these are real cases, your sandwich shop employee who's making $15, $16 an hour, you can't slip a non-compete into their agreement to tell them they can't go and work in fast casual dining for another 2 years within a 50-mile radius. That's absurd. One of the concerns about this is that, I'm talking about the wrong amendment. My apologies. So one of the other allowable uses for restrictive employment agreements, so not specifically non-competes, is to say if an employer invests in you and does training, we think that it's appropriate if you leave within a certain period of time, and existing law says 2 years, that you be allowed to recover a percent of that training. And so what this amendment does is it clarifies how you would prorate that. And with that, I ask for a yes vote. I'll also say this is language that we worked on with the business community to just clarify how you would prorate the appropriate collection of training expenses. And I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009 to the Judiciary Report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I move Amendment L010 and ask that it be displayed in its amendment to the committee report.
The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the context I was giving before was really setting it up for this amendment, so I apologize. Like I said, what my bill intends to do is to create this bright line rule on income threshold. And in talks with the business community, they brought up great points saying, well, what if that individual doesn't work the full year? Does that mean that they wouldn't hit the income threshold? So this amendment clarifies that it's essentially annualized, and that it defines total compensation to mean if you go on leave, for example, but you are either salaried or you're intending to make the threshold, those individuals can still be subjected to non-competes. The idea is we're not trying to trap folks, we're just trying to create kind of a proxy for insider business knowledge and managerial experience. So we clarify the definition of annualized cash compensation to capture that. And with that, I ask for a yes vote on Amendment L10 to the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Until the bill sponsor, can you clarify how trade secrets are protected? Even to the lowest employee, when companies have their specific business models, their specific, very unique things that their business brings to the customers, that perhaps because of their ingenuity and their entrepreneurship need to be protected. So how is that done? Because it seems like this is very one-sided for the employee, but eliminates and removes those protections of the employer and that small business.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. It's a legitimate concern, but I don't believe that we are eliminating the protections for businesses, and I'll tell you why. One, and we've already passed that amendment, right?
L010 has not been adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I just say I don't think that it goes to this amendment, but I appreciate the concern. It goes to the bill. So I'll talk about it, but it's not part of this amendment. So the bill itself and existing law has an exception for trade secrets. We say you can use non-competes to protect trade secrets. Trade secrets, it sounds like, as you know, are extremely broad. It is not the case, like I sort of thought, that a trade secret is just, as I've said, the recipe to Coca-Cola or Listerine or sort of these famous examples, which by the way includes McDonald's special sauce. I thought that like everyone kind of knew what that was, but apparently it's a trade secret. It's not limited to that. It is expansive. It is customer lists. It is pricing. It's really any inside knowledge that the company does not share to the outside, right? It's the competitive advantage that you have. All of that is considered a trade secret. What that means is, one, it's protected by both robust state and federal law, regardless of whether you have a contract. If you misappropriate trade secrets, you're in violation of state and federal law, and as one of the witnesses says, you could be bankrupted for it. Number two, the exception in this bill and in current law is to protect trade secrets. So non-competes are applicable to protect trade secrets. Number three, nothing prohibits a company from entering into regular contract law like non-disclosure agreements or confidentiality agreements. Those provisions protect things that are actually broader than trade secrets. So sure, you could belt and suspenders and rely on federal and state law and also require your employee to sign an NDA that covers trade secrets and other things that aren't trade secrets. None of the current body of law on trade secret protections is displaced. So in my opinion, businesses can still protect their trade secret interests regardless of whether this bill passes.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the bill sponsor, explain to me then this annualized cash compensation and how that would apply in the context of this bill and who that applies to.
So,
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. Annualized compensation is defined as you see here below. I can sort of walk through that, but the goal is to create a threshold to say non-compete provisions. So that the general rule is under my bill, non-compete provisions cannot be enforced against an individual, any individual, unless they earn over a certain amount of money. Okay, that threshold is a CDALE threshold, and the concern was, well, some folks earn on a salary basis, some are hourly, some are commission-based. And again, I'm not trying to trap folks. I recognize that. So that's where the definition comes from. Realizing that it's both employees and independent contractors that earn in different ways, but whatever it takes to get to that threshold. And then, like I said, recognizing that some people go on leave or may only work for 6 months of the year, so then it would be half of that annualized compensation threshold. Where it applies to everyone that works at the company, both as it's a worker, as an employee, or an independent contractor.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the intent to, just for the low-income employees to have the opportunity to go and take trade secrets from this company and maybe apply them in their own businesses and not allow the company to protect their interests? For example, if you have a coffee shop and you're a small business and you have a special way of brewing your coffee, and any employee is going to learn a trade secret at any level because they're making the coffee, but it's a very unique and special blend or thing that they do to create competitive advantage in the market space. Does that mean that that business has no protection even from the lowest level employee? And how does this amendment address that? And who is this amendment support, or who does it favor in this case, the employee or the employer?
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, and I think I understand your question a little bit better. As I said, state and federal trade secret law still exist. Contract law still exists. NDAs and confidentiality agreements are not in any way affected by this bill. So while it's true that my proposal says if you earn less than a certain threshold, so you're lower wage workers, a non-compete cannot be applied against you. A non-compete to protect trade secrets cannot be applied against you. Companies still have the recourse of state and federal law, and they don't have to do anything other than sue someone for misappropriation of trade secrets. And as I mentioned, they can still enter into confidentiality agreements and NDAs. So my point was there is some folks operate off the premise that the only way to protect trade secrets is through non-competes. That is categorically false. There is a robust body of law at both the state and federal level that protect trade secrets. And then, like I said, contract law that robustly protects interests that go well beyond trade secrets. And then the answer to your second question is it benefits both employees and employers. This is not a employer versus employee situation. There are employers that find themselves on the other side where they're trying to recruit talent and they can't, or they have to hire lawyers to fight these non-compete provisions that are extremely broad. And I talked with lawyers that have worked on both sides of the issue, and so the data also shows us in other states that have moved in this direction that employers benefit from this. Sectors benefit from this. Non-competes actually suppress innovation and business growth. And so that's my answer to your second question. And with that, I ask for a yes vote on Amendment L10.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L10 to the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr.
Tipper.
Chair. So I'll just outline the parameters of the bill, and then I have 3 amendments to the bill.
Excuse me, to the Judiciary report. My mistake.
Oh, I'm sorry. I asked for a yes vote on the Judiciary report.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee report passes. Now to the bill. My apologies, Representative Tipper.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it very much. Okay, so like I said, at a high level, current law says non-competes cannot be enforced if you're a management or executive level employee. Excuse me, current law says they can't be enforced unless you're a management or executive level employee, or to protect trade secrets, or in the sale of a business, or if you're trying to recover expenses related to training. We do not touch the sale of the business. We do not touch the expenses related to training except to clarify provisions, but substantively, we keep the status quo there. There's also a provision in law that says essentially limits non-competes on physicians, and the public policy goal behind that is we don't want, for example, specialists to be prohibited from going and working and serving other communities. Restraining the access to public health is not good. We don't touch that provision. The two provisions that I touch in this bill are I get rid of the management and executive level exception. And the reason I do that is because it has been applied so broadly. I've had members of this lobby come and tell me their daughter, who is a swim instructor, 17 years old, 18 years old, had a non-compete provision put into their contract that said, you can't go and work and you can't teach other kids how to swim for 2 years. That's egregious. That doesn't make any sense. That individual is not possessing the kinds of high-level information that would ruin a business model if it got out. I mentioned the sandwich shop. There's a famous federal case, Jimmy John's and Subway, that were involved in this, that had, like I said, 17, 18-year-old managers. It's not good policy, particularly because lower wage employees, when they see these provisions, they don't have the money to hire a lawyer and spend $20,000 or $30,000 on fighting a non-compete provision. So it has a chilling effect. It restricts an individual's ability to earn a living. Why we would endorse that as policy is, I don't understand. I can understand that in limited situations for high wage earners. So I say, the body of law on management and executive exception swallows the rule. It's so expansive that basically anyone can fit into that. You have one case that says there are 3 levels of management above you. Of course you're not a manager. And then another court case that says there are only 3 levels of management above you. Of course you're in management. The litigation on that piece alone is expensive and has a chilling effect. So I say get rid of that and instead let's do a proxy for that that actually makes sense. And mind you, there was not disagreement on this. There's disagreement on the levels, but there was not disagreement on there's disagreement on the amount that it should be, but folks agree that just having a bright line rule is better. It's more clarity in the law and it protects people because an individual can read the statute and understand that they're making less than that threshold, way less than that threshold, therefore a non-compete is not enforceable against them. Right now that clarity does not exist. The second thing is narrowing the trade secret exception to individuals that make above that amount of money. Right? So what I'm saying is you're going to restrain entrepreneurship. You're going to restrain talent. You're going to restrain an individual's ability to earn a living. Do it for a legitimate business purpose, a legitimate business interest, and make it narrowed to that. We capture existing law on that. And so the change is, this is the thrust of the bill. The change is if you make less than $101,000, non-competes cannot be enforced against you. Like I said, trade secret law still applies. Contract law, NDAs, confidentiality agreements still apply. If you make above $101,000, trade secret law still applies. Contract law still applies. Oh, and by the way, not just belt and suspenders, but I don't know what else you would put to hold up your pants. You guys let me know. I'm not wearing any. Okay.
I would like to gently direct you back to the bill, Representative Tipper.
Fair. My apologies. Yes, I apologize for the lack of decorum.
Losing your way.
That's right. So the third safety mechanism, whatever that would be, Velcro is a non-compete. And again, understand that non-competes restrain an individual's ability to earn in the fields that they are gaining expertise in. So as you're moving up in your career, and as you get higher and higher and you're getting higher paid and you have access to the information that people give you in a business, we say that from a policy perspective makes sense to allow an employer to restrain someone's ability to earn a living because of the likelihood that they have access to pretty sensitive material. The other components of the bill are notice provisions. So I mentioned we have heard of several circumstances where someone doesn't...
And Representative Tipper, I'm sorry. I'm just going to interrupt you briefly. Members, it's getting a little loud. I didn't even get to bang the gavel. You all did it so well.
All right, I'll
Thanks
wrap
for
this
taking
up.
your conversations off to the side.
So the other thing that this does, and there's a broad agreement on this, is it says we are going to require notice. So you have to give someone a non-compete before they accept a job. I think everyone agrees that's fair. Also, it needs to be a document that's easily readable, standalone, not buried in tiny provisions in the other section of the contract. And also for employees that are maybe getting a raise or compensation, it just has to be 14 days in advance of when that goes into effect. So it's just notice. It's allowing people the opportunity to know that this is going to be applied against them. Everyone's in agreement that that's good. I'll just conclude by saying, because I know my colleagues here have questions, this bill started with the uniform law. The uniform law, which is not partisan, you have Republicans from Alaska and Democrats from Nebraska working on this together, 350 lawyers. More than half are Republicans. Again, this is it's not a partisan issue. It's not a business v. employee issue. It just doesn't cut down those lines. It's a difficult policy discussion, and I absolutely invite conversation on it, but I don't want people to get the impression that it is so partisan. The uniform law was a complete rewrite of what we had in Colorado statute. And so business said, please don't do that. Please work within the existing statute. We agree with you on most of these changes, not all, I admit it, most of these changes, but please don't rewrite it. So we started from scratch, and that's what 1317 is very limited, very narrow policy changes that I believe are important to advance the goals that I have for the bill. And with that, I ask for a yes vote and invite my colleagues to ask questions.
Further discussion. Representative Holtorf.
I can filibuster
Thank you,
too.
Mr. Chair. And I thought I was good at filibustering, but I've been proven wrong. House Bill 221317. I heard very passionate and deliberate testimony in support of this bill from the bill sponsor. I will tell you a lot of statements are made that there's broad agreement, everybody agrees. But I will tell you we are coming out of a COVID-19 epidemic. And I'm going to save those words for my colleague because he runs a small business, and we have talked about this. But I will tell you, when you hire young people, old people, any age of people, and you have a business model and you have specific things in your business that allow your business to thrive, the last thing a business wants is for somebody of any age to come in, learn your trade secrets, learn your business models, and learn the things that you do that give you a competitive edge in business, and then walk out 3, 4, 6, 8 months later and go across town and open up a business that now is going to compete with you for market share. And maybe that market share is finite. I don't understand that. And everybody has the responsibility when they sign an employment agreement to read it and know it and understand it. And 2 years is not that long. If you've taken and learned and gained that knowledge and that experience, that this business and the people that have this business have been invested in this business to great extent through their entrepreneurship, you really don't want somebody walking out the door and taking that with them and saying, oh, thanks a lot for your time and your experience. I really appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know the recipe of the secret sauce. Thanks for letting me know how you do things to gain competitive advantage. And now I'm going to go do what I want to do. And oh, by the way, if people are so passionate about doing that, why don't they move to another state and go do it? Because I'm pretty sure the state law won't transcend that. Maybe federal law will, but why then would we even begin to consider undermining the state and federal law that the bill sponsor so passionately says is protected in every case? I don't understand why we want to undermine that. That's one question for the bill sponsor. Why do we want to chisel away at that? How do we come up with the $101,000 threshold? Because everybody knows that employees, lower management, middle management usually is under that threshold. That's reserved for upper management. And upper management understands these agreements. The claim is that this helps the little people, the lower people that are below. So, I really struggle with this. And what I don't understand is how is it that if this bill is so good and everybody agrees on it to such a large extent, how does the National Federation of Independent Businesses not support it? Which is one of the largest organizations supporting small business in the country. It is my belief that this bill will hurt small business, not help small business. And we want to use the Silicon Valley model. Well, guess what? The Silicon Valley model doesn't work all over the country. And I don't think that's the model that we should be trying to follow in any case, particularly in Colorado. So I have those questions for the bill sponsor at this time.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I hate to sound like a Republican, but I think competition is good for the market. Free market principles. Why are we telling people you can't work for 2 years in your profession? That doesn't make sense. Did you hear that, Colorado? If you're passionate about your job, leave the state. That is what he just told you. That doesn't make sense. We want our talent to stay in this state. We want our entrepreneurs to stay in this state, not be told, it's not too long. 2 years is not too long to not work. Are you kidding me? We are coming out of a pandemic when people are out of work. And you're telling them to leave the state? No. We're talking about daycare workers, talking about swim instructors, talking about sandwich shop employees. We are talking about the backbone of the small businesses. Those people deserve to earn a living. They deserve to not be subjected to abusive practices that stifle their ability to earn, to feed their families, to put food on the table, and to advance in their careers. I ask for a yes vote on the bill.
Representative Amabile.
Doesn't work. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think many of you know that for 25 years I ran a small business here in Colorado, and we manufactured insulated water bottles for reusable for outdoor activities. And in Boulder, surprisingly, not surprisingly, there were lots of competitors also making water bottles. And when we started, we weren't doing anything really. We weren't having anybody sign anything. But along the way, we were told, oh, you should have this non-compete, non-disclosure. We have a national payroll company that we hired to run our payroll. And they said, we'll just put that in the handbook. And anybody who you hire, by virtue of signing the handbook, will have agreed to the terms of this non-compete, non-disclosure agreement. And that meant all of our assembly line workers. It meant our janitor. It meant every single person who worked for us was then, supposedly bound by this agreement. And in reflecting back on whether that was a good idea or not, I have to say it was a misstep on our part, because people did take that seriously, and they were actually conflicted about what they should do if they wanted to leave our business, if they were offered a job at a competitor, maybe for more money or for better opportunity or to do something different than what they were doing for us. And in fact, it wasn't going to harm us to have somebody leave our assembly line work and go to work for somebody else who maybe didn't even have an assembly line. Maybe they were manufacturing in Asia and they got a job in their shipping department. But the wording in that agreement said that they couldn't do that. And the idea that somebody who's making $12 an hour can just sit it out for a couple of years is really preposterous. because people need to work and they need to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them. So would I say the same thing about my $100,000 a year accountant or my sales executive who knew how all of our costs, all of our profit margins? He knew how much we were making on our Target business versus our Walmart business versus our independent bike shop business. Yeah, that person I would not have wanted to go to work for a competitor. And so I think the bill really strikes a great line between what makes sense for the people who really do have access to the most proprietary information and the people who don't and who should not be impacted by this. And it was sloppy of us to make everybody sign the same agreement. And we shouldn't, I think there should be guardrails around that prevent companies from doing that. And so I would urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in my fervid passion, I forgot that I have 3 more amendments, so I will offer those. I offer amendment L00, I move amendment L005 and ask that it be displayed.
Thank you, Representative Tipper. The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this does is, again, it's a consensus amendment just to say, to recognize there are some people that take paid leave or unpaid leave, and it might dip them below the compensation threshold. That's not my intent, just recognizing that those individuals would have, but for that leave, made the compensation threshold. So it just codifies that. I ask for a yes vote on amendment L005.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005 to House Bill 1317. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this was also, I move amendment L006 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment looks at the sort of enforcement provisions, and we agreed to say that the penalty only applies if the employer is acting in bad faith. So right now, the penalty applies if the employer has unenforceable non-competes. And so we recognize that an employer could have a good faith belief, and this is a protection for employers and something that the business community wanted that I agree with. So I ask for a yes vote on amendment L006.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L006 to House Bill 1317. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I should say, business community wanted it, but I also agree. I think it's a good amendment, so thank you for passing it. I move amendment L008 and ask that it be displayed. What?
L008 is properly before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is legal minds getting together and recognizing that there is a robust body of law in Colorado. And because we are making changes to the statutes, we want to make clear that we are not trying to displace that body of law. Where appropriate, we use language actually from cases. For example, with trade secrets, they have to be reasonable non-competes that are only as reasonably necessary to protect the trade secrets. That's actually existing law. And so we put that in the statute, but we also wanted to make clear that we are not intending to displace the case law otherwise in that regard. So for example, non-solicitation agreements are allowed in Colorado. They're subject to the non-compete provisions in the statute, so section 82113. And there was concern that because of the changes we are making, the courts would interpret the changes to mean we are getting rid of non-solicitation agreements. That's not the case. And so an amendment like this, again, business community wanted this. We agree with it. I agree with it, and really everyone that came together to work on this bill, which we've stakeholdered for the last 3 months, agrees on it. So I ask for a yes vote on Amendment L008.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L008 to House Bill 1317. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill. Representative Woog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I urge a no vote on this bill, and I respectfully disagree with my colleague from House District 28. 28? Okay, thank you. The reality is that, as was mentioned, there was testimony from the business community against this bill. And I believe it hurts small businesses. I mean, really, as sure as the sun rises and sets, restrictions on businesses will create an issue for those businesses. That's not a positive. This ultimately hurts. You know, I just ran into a guy at the gym the other day this week, and he was wearing scrubs, and I said, "What do you do in the healthcare field?" And he said, "I'm a dentist." And I asked him how things were going after COVID, during COVID, since COVID, and he said, "You know what? There's not a day that goes by that I don't consider hanging it up. I can't find employees. It's a struggle." And the reality is, I talk to business owners, and I believe, hopefully we all do, in the community, and people are struggling. So when I see a bill like this right now, after COVID, I just think it's the absolute opposite of what we should be doing. If we want businesses to thrive and small businesses to thrive, if nothing else, let's wait on this type of legislation. This adds to the stress of business owners. Something like this, considering new legislation, and it seems like it's rampant, and I'm speaking as a small business owner. It just keeps coming out. We have to keep up with it. We're trying to make sure we have employees. We're trying to make sure we're servicing our clients. We're doing the best job we can through the worst couple of years we've ever experienced. And to think that we're creating more regulation and restrictions right now is absolutely the wrong thing to do. It's not good for Colorado. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for Coloradans. And it's certainly not good for small businesses. So I urge a no vote.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate it, Representative Woog. I heard Representative Woog, say that he's got employers in his district that say they can't find employees and that people are struggling. This is not a restriction on business. Right now, in law, we're restricting your talent. We are restricting those employees. We are making it harder for employers to find employees because those employees have restrictive agreements that say they can't go and work somewhere else. It's a fallacy to say that this is a restriction on business. This is a restriction on the people that make up your business. Employers stand with this legislation because they can't recruit people to work at their companies because of non-competes.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make the same passionate plea for businesses and business owners. You see, I've heard the passionate plea and the cry for the employees and how it's so hard for them. If they're in a good business and they're good employees and they work in that business, then they can learn and grow within that business. They don't need to jump ship. And there are reasons, many reasons why employees jump ship. But one of the main reasons they shouldn't be jumping ship is to take the good ideas and business practices and that experience that they've learned in a successful small business and transfer that somewhere else, maybe into their own business, at a time when that small business may be struggling. Those employees have no idea what's going on with the cash flow of that business or the books or the challenges. What Colorado wants, what small business wants, is relief and help to support them. How about if we in Colorado, we in this body, we as legislators, help the small businesses by not taking away tools that protect them or putting more restrictions on them that hinder their ability to operate. You see, small business has struggled. We closed hundreds of thousands of small businesses in COVID due to very bad public policy. Here we are again with more policy. Does it help small business? Really? Really? Then why is the National Federation of Independent Businesses, who I'm a member of, not say yes? And they raise their hands in celebration and say, this is great for small business. Let's do it. But rather they say no. This is not good for small business. Ladies and gentlemen, small business is not excited about this at all, in many cases. So I can't sit here and pretend. I would ask for other small businesses, people that employ 8 employees, 10 employees or less, like me, to say, do I need more legislation to change my business model or hinder my ability to operate? Or give away the secrets that I have in my business that give me competitive advantage and keep me in business? Now I'm going to throw another thing on the table, ladies and gentlemen. That business is employing people. It's providing for families. It's providing homes for families and children that go to schools. If you do things to upset the small business model and upset small businesses that may jeopardize their ability to continue through dangerous public policy, then you may see more businesses closing their doors. And I'm going to let out another little secret, Colorado. There are many businesses that are considering not staying here, but rather moving because of things that happen like this. Business owners, small business owners, Coloradoans who thrive in Colorado with their small business, they want help. They don't want more legal challenges. And I believe this could bring potentially more legal challenges. And who does that help? Well, it just helped the lawyers. The lawyers are the ones that benefit from this. So with the same passion that the bill sponsor brings, how about if we bring that to the small business owners and the small business communities with things that help them thrive and continue, and perhaps don't challenge their ability to operate in their small niche market space. I will tell you, in my hometown, and I'm going to tell a story now. In my hometown, how many coffee shops do you think Akron, Colorado can support? Anyone? Population 1,500. I see 3, I see 2. Well, I guarantee it's not more than 3. And we have non-disclosures, and I know people that are my constituents that have said, I needed that non-disclosure because I didn't want to bring an employee in here, learn the trades of brewing coffee, and then 2 or 3 or 4 months later they walk out, go down the street and set up another coffee shop. And now all of us suffer. Then all the businesses suffer. There is only, many cases, so much market share to support businesses, particularly in rural Colorado. This does not help rural Colorado in many cases, I promise you. What is your profit margin when you have more businesses? I understand in the urban corridor, you have growth. You have expansion. But that is not the case in places in southern Colorado, southeastern Colorado, northeastern Colorado, and perhaps many places in the far reaches of the frontier regions in western Colorado. Does this help the people that I represent? I have strong reservations, Mr. Chair. And I have strong reservations, and I'm expressing those to the bill sponsor. You know what small business wants? To be left alone. Just let us run our businesses. Just let us try to survive and thrive in our business space without more rules, regulations, or laws coming down on us from on high as the state of Colorado tries to help us even more.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. And I heard you express concern about your rural communities and about Akron and coffee shops and confidentiality agreements and NDAs, and that those are tools employed to protect these business interests. And I agree with you, which is why this bill does nothing to touch that. Your coffee business in Akron can avail themselves of the tools that they have under this bill. Nothing touches that, okay? And you know what else? People also want to be left alone. People want to be able to go and work. They don't want to be trapped in an employment situation. What good policy is that? To force someone to stay with an employer because of an egregious non-compete provision. That's not good business.
Representative Holtorf. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another thing I'd like to highlight where we live, and this may come as a surprise to my urbanites, but there are very few people out there making $100,000.
Great. Not great.
Some cases, not $50,000. Even in the business spaces. So I'm not sure. I'd like for the bill sponsor to clarify some of those limitations and how this wouldn't hurt the small businesses in eastern Colorado or the far reaches of western Colorado. And the other thing is, when did this become such a problem? When did this become such a problem in Colorado? That now, today, post-COVID, we're having to do this and pass this type of legislation. Sometimes less is better for small business. Less rule, less regulation, less statute, less things to worry about. To have to call your lawyer and talk about something else, or call a new lawyer to talk about something else.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So please forgive me. I had to step out for a minute to visit with some constituents, so I may have missed some of the conversation. My concern with this bill is actually represented in the amendment that we considered related to the annualization of salary. Why am I concerned about that? Well, because it demonstrates that we can't in this building contemplate every interaction, every contractual agreement, every arrangement that people might want to enter into in the marketplace. And we can't plan for all of those and say, yes, we think that this part is good and this part is bad. I have had a very untraditional career path, and there have been instances in my own life where I should have been paid much more for the work that I was doing. And I had access to a lot of information that would be encompassed within the realm of that $100,000 plus kind of information. Those entities that I worked for and I entered into knowingly and willingly these kinds of interactions, should their information have been at risk of being revealed simply because of the dollar amount that they were able to pay me and that I was willing to accept? I don't believe so. That being said, I understand the heart behind this bill. I think it is unconscionable to say to a 17-year-old, you can't go and work for another pool next summer because you worked for us this summer. My struggle is that contracting principles should be able to govern this without the specificity that this bill requires. It would not at all surprise me if a lot of these non-compete, non-disclosure, other agreements that are being addressed under this bill are included in contracts without much thought. Many people don't go to a lawyer to start a business, right? And they shouldn't have to. Economic freedom is often judged by the number of loopholes you have to walk through in order to start a business. Many times people will just they'll Google contracts, and they'll pull up a boilerplate and they'll print it out and they'll change a few things and they'll give it to their person, think this is what it's supposed to be. Those are conversations that we had when I was president of a chamber of commerce with our businesses to say, hey, make sure that every aspect of your contract not only benefits your side, but you're thinking about the other people also. These are conversations I had when I taught contract law in a law school with my students. Make sure, again, that yes, while you're robustly representing your own clients, you're also giving thought to the other person on the other side of that piece of paper. Does this issue need to be addressed? Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. There's a lot of things that are wrong about the way we do life, and we do have a propensity to knowingly or unknowingly take advantage of others. Does that need to continue to occur? No. But we can't in this building legislate for all of those eventualities, and I do believe that by putting these restrictions in the way that this does, we are going to limit interactions and contractual arrangements that otherwise would be beneficial to both parties. And so I rise in opposition to this bill, though again, I do understand the heart from which it comes and do believe that as a larger society, we need to be having these conversations. But I do challenge those participating in chambers of commerce, those teaching law schools, those engaging in business to take into account these important principles. Thank you.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And but I guess maybe if we can, the next time the sponsor responds to another question, maybe remind everybody what this bill is about and examples of what it, maybe jobs that it focuses on and some jobs that it doesn't. Because I think we're kind of getting off track of really what this bill does, and we're discussing some things that really are not relevant to really what the bill claims to do. Also, something, I've worked in different jobs that had these type of contracts. They're rarely ever, I guess, used, or they're used, but they're rarely ever in a position where they're enforced. And, a business is not going to spend money, because it costs money to enforce these contracts, spend money over a janitor going someplace else. They're rarely enforced. And so that's one thing I think people should acknowledge. But I think at some point we're getting off the bill. We're talking about contracts that aren't even associated with the bill. So maybe we need some type of reminder of really what this bill does and type of jobs that it kind of includes. Thank you.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to the bill, but largely because I don't really think it's needed. To the points that were just made a few minutes ago, these provisions that are in non-compete agreements, they're there to protect intellectual property. While there's a great deal of a body of law that already does that, what these agreements do is ensure that if someone goes out there and shops your contact list, your particular advertising campaign strategies, your marketing strategies and so forth, that you've got some means to go after. The vast majority of people that has been cited here about the restaurant worker, or nobody cares about those, and nobody pursues any of that. That's not what's really at issue. The concern that people have are exactly what I just said. You have someone working for you. We don't want that person to go to the competitor and give them their contact list and everything else. So what this does, what these non-compete agreements do, is provide a mechanism to have some redress to go after someone who undermines your business, sabotages your work by giving your contact list, your strategies, your marketing, and everything else. It's not aimed at the line worker who's doing the same job no matter where he goes. So let's just kind of focus on where that is. And that's really what this is about. That's where the concern is. We don't want someone to go to your competitor and do that. I used to work in several companies and in a lot of other companies in that same business, and these agreements were standard. It didn't prevent anybody from jumping from one company to another to follow the contracts. It just ensured that if you went to another company, you weren't taking all that intellectual property and using it to the detriment of the company that you just left. It's when that happens that these things are enforced. They provide a mechanism. We don't really need this bill. And I ask for no vote.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What Representative Pico just described violates federal law. It's illegal under federal law and state law to misappropriate trade secrets. You can't shop customer lists. Those are trade secrets. You can't give them insider business information unless the company puts their customer list on their website. It's a trade secret. You can't do that. I'm not touching that. You know what I also heard? I heard the representative say, I don't care about restaurant workers. I do. And you know why? Non-competes are prolific. They're everywhere. And you know why they're not enforced against low-wage workers? Because they're unenforceable. But they're put in the contracts to scare people. And a teacher making $25,000, $36,000, he's not going to go and litigate the issue. He's just not going to teach for 2 years. They're unenforceable because they're against public policy. But when someone reads the statute, they don't see that. They don't understand that. If we put a bright line that says if you make less than this amount of money, non-competes cannot be enforced against you, we stop the chilling effect. We stop restraining people's ability to earn money because they think that their employer, who has the coffers to litigate the case, might be right. Representative Leck, it's not perfect. I agree. And you know what? I would get rid of non-competes altogether. I'd say no non-competes if that wouldn't blow up this building. But that's not the political reality we live in. We don't have the courage to do that. We can't do it. So this is a compromise. To me, this gets the heart of the bill. The heart that I have for this bill is it gets to the most vulnerable people that do have non-competes, that often are unenforceable, but will never have the means to litigate that and will be scared to even try. So we will push that talent out. Pass this bill.
Representative Pico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Make absolutely clear, I did not say that I didn't care about restaurant workers. What I said was that no one is concerned about that level of worker at the lower levels who are doing a standard job from one company to another. No one is concerned about them taking trade secrets. Yes, trade secrets and customer lists and everything else that goes with that. All of the different ideas that a business uses can be prosecuted under trade secrets. It is also the issue of we don't want you to go to your competitor and shop from McDonald's to Taco Bell or to anybody else. We don't really care if you do. We don't want you to take that information and undermine your business. You heard here a minute ago that if she could, she would take care of all of these, eliminate all non-compete agreements. In the business I worked in, those non-compete agreements were critical for access to a certain amount of information. You can't function a large business at that level. The same philosophy, however, extends all the way down the ladder. You can't undermine the viability of the businesses or there will be no jobs if you undermine the businesses. If you're concerned about the workers, don't sabotage the business. We don't need this bill. I ask for no vote.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The declaration by the bill sponsor that all non-disclosure agreements would be removed or should be removed is troubling.
And Representative Holtorf, I just want to gently guide us back to the bill itself and what is actually on the pages of the bill. and I appreciate it, and I'll make sure to do the same for everybody at the well.
Okay. But the comment was made to this bill, Mr. Chair. So I just want to highlight that. It's concerning. The premise of the bill, albeit small, brings upon another issue that I believe in the bill, and I'll ask the bill sponsor to clarify that the Department of Labor is going to determine the threshold. So now you're going to have an administrative agency, a state department that's going to make rule, promulgate rule and policy that's going to make this determination. And how does that fit? How does that fit across the state? How does that fit regionally? As I pointed out, there's a big difference in economies and economic disparity across this state for different businesses and different business models. One might fit in Boulder County, but you take that to Washington County and it doesn't work. Oftentimes, these things are important. They're not unimportant, they're important. The secret sauce in the trade secrets and the things that businesses use at every level are theirs. They're uniquely theirs. In fact, they're even called proprietary. But to think that somebody that's a janitor can't go and be a janitor somewhere else, or someone that's a swim instructor can't go and teach swimming, well, they can't teach swimming if they use those special techniques that were learned in the previous business, or the recipes that were used in the previous business, and export those or transport those either for their own purpose or to another competitive business. I think that's important to protect. I think small businesses would like more protection, would like more help so they can thrive, not be undermined by even this small piece of legislation. So I am still a no vote, and I still have reservations. Maybe the bill sponsor can explain that to me so I better understand it. But right now I still have strong reservations about this.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1317? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1317 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1317 as amended is passed. Mr. Shibo, please read the title to House Bill 1309.
House Bill 1309 by Representative Froelich, also Senator Winter, concerning the authority of a hospital to dispense a 7-day supply of drugs to a victim of sexual assault in order to treat sexually transmitted infections.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it is a pleasure to serve with you.
It is a pleasure to serve with you.
Members, this bill is a small bill in a series of bills that are providing...
And Representative Froelich, we just need you to move the bill.
Oh, you're so right. I move House Bill 1309.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So this is in a series of bills that are attempting to bring a series of rights to sex assault survivors. This one is about dispensing actual medication to fight sexually transmitted diseases. I actually have an amendment. I'd like to move Amendment L2, please.
1 second, we'll get that displayed.
And
the amendment is properly before us. Please proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a small change. Some of the medications possibly could require more than 7 days, and so we have 7-day language in the bill, and we just like a little flexibility to 28 days, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L02 to House Bill 1309. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. To the bill, Representative Froelich.
Thank you. And again, this is just a small fix that brings some bit of dignity to our sex assault survivors as they're going through the hospital process. This allows them to go home with the medication they need instead of having to actually go to a pharmacy and go through the process of getting the medicine through prescription. So I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1309? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1309 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1309 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 221010.
House Bill 1010 by Representative Sirota and Van Beber, also Senators Buckner and Kirkmeyer, concerning an income tax credit for eligible early childhood educators.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll talk a little slowly because I bet my co-prime is here somewhere, but I move House Bill 1010, the appropriations report, and the education report.
Thank you, Representative Sirota. To the appropriations report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a little bit of money for the Department of Revenue to make the tax credit work. And I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The Appropriations Committee report passes. To the Education report. Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the Education Committee, we made a couple amendments. One, just to reframe the legislative declaration to really help people understand why it is we believe this tax credit is important for early childhood educators. We in particular addressed the amount of the credit and which credential levels would get what. And I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Education Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Education Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be really brief, but I just want to be clear about why we need this tax credit for our early childhood educators. We know that Colorado has been recovering from the pandemic and the economic downturn, and in that economic downturn, we've often called it the she-cession, that it has been very, very difficult for a lot of families, a lot of women, to be able to get back to their jobs because of the challenges finding childcare. And we have an incredible workforce of early childhood educators in the state of Colorado, but they are really underpaid. And this bill seeks to put a little bit more money into the pockets of our early childhood educators as both a recruitment and retention tool. 78% of our child care providers identified low wages as to why recruitment and retention is a challenge. We know that 80% of our centers are experiencing a staffing shortage. Half of them are serving fewer children. A third of them can't open new classrooms, and a quarter of them have reduced operating hours. We believe this is a simple and effective tool to ensure that we are both able to recruit new educators and retain those folks who are already in this industry. And I ask for your support.
Representative Van Beber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is a pleasure to serve with you.
It is a pleasure to serve with you as well.
When it comes to House Bill 221010, the Early Childhood Educator Refundable Tax Credit, this is purely meant to ensure that we have additional certification, additional credentialing, and additional training, if you will, so that we can ensure that there are not only more early childhood care providers, but more importantly, with more early childhood care providers across the state of Colorado, we then increase that workforce so that the biggest barrier of why people are not returning to the workforce, which is a lack of child care, sometimes just an hour a day, 2 hours a day, most often no more than just 4 hours a day, we have folks in place to help teach our children so that people can get back to work here in the state of Colorado. When this is done in other places, the retainment of new and not only of folks who are currently in the system teaching in early childhood care, but bringing new people into the system has increased sometimes anywhere between 4 and 8-fold the amount of individuals who can help decrease the gap in the number of individuals providing early childhood care. I do ask for a yes vote on this bill. It is a cascading effect that allows our folks to get back to work, allows us to have quality child care, and allows, and most importantly, honors how people would like to raise their children in early childhood in order for them to not only have control over that, but then also get back to work here in the state of Colorado.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1010? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1010 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1010 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1083.
House Bill 1083 by Representatives Tipper and Rich, also Senators Winter and Simpson, concerning the creation of the Colorado Homeless Contribution Income Tax Credit. I'll do that one.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1083, the Appropriations Report, and the Finance Committee Report.
Thank you, Representative Tipper. To the Appropriations Report. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In House Appropriations today, we had two amendments. One decreased the sunset from 8 to 6 years. Also, the appropriations funded the Department of Local Affairs for fiscal year 22-23. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Appropriations Committee Report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee Report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is passed. To the to the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in Finance, we added a handful of amendments that clarified that only 501c3s can be eligible entities. In other words, when an individual and organization donates to the nonprofit, the types of nonprofits just have to be 501c3s. I think originally it just said 501c. And then we clarified that the organizations, they have a cap on what they can collect. So it's $750,000. Third, we clarified that the individual who donates can get a maximum tax credit, or the entity that donates can get a maximum tax credit of $100,000. Of course, they can donate more than 4 times that because the tax credit is 25%, but the credit is maxed. And then we added some language to the oversight function of the Division of Housing. And with that, I ask for a yes vote on the Finance Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
The Finance Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L001 to House Bill 22-1083. L007, sorry.
1 second. All right, the amendment is properly before us. Please proceed. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a technical amendment, striking the word and substituting or on pages 7 and also page 8. And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007 to House Bill 1083. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The amendment is passed. Representative Tipper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So House Bill 1083 is something that I'm excited about to work with Representative Rich on. I think it's helpful to understand current law. So currently, in the state of Colorado, there is a tax credit that allows individuals or entities to donate to nonprofits that serve homeless populations or populations that are at increased risk of becoming homeless. The caveat is those organizations have to be in enterprise zones. And so, for example, the Capitol is in an enterprise zone, but the Baptist Church across the street is not. The homeless population around this area obviously is not confined to that arbitrary boundary of 14th Street. And because this tax credit has been incredibly successful at generating revenue or generating funding for these important local organizations that serve these populations, The bill that we have before you intends to expand it from just enterprise credits to a statewide tax credit. We heard in testimony how what's really great about this, the existing tax credit and what we contemplate under the bill, is that it allows individuals to decide what community organizations to make investments in. So there's buy-in in their community. And in my case, the Action Center in Jefferson County does tremendous work. That's who I donate to, and then I get the benefit of the tax credit. I'll turn it over to my counterpart to explain some of the more components of this bill and what I think makes this an excellent bill that we should all support.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're making the existing credit statewide. Colorado has an existing tax credit for organizations that provide homeless services. This bill will expand that credit from being based in enterprise zones to statewide, similar to what my colleague just said, and we will be relocating from OEDIT to the Department of Local Affairs. If the program is moving away from OEDIT and enterprise zones, it no longer fits within OEDIT and should be aligned with the state's other housing programs in the Department of Local Affairs Division of Housing. Why do we need this bill? Homelessness is not an issue bounded by geography. Individuals who are living without shelter are located throughout Colorado, not just urban, suburban, but also rural areas. A 2020 survey by the U.S. Department of Housing indicated that Colorado had an estimated 9,846 individuals experiencing homeless on any given day. This included 665 family households, 1,444 veterans, 562 unaccompanied young adults, and 2,954 experiencing chronic homelessness. Public school data during 2018-2019 showed 21,516 students experienced homelessness at some point in the year. Over 1,000 of these students were unsheltered, with others in shelters and motels, and many doubling up. That data only showed the beginning of the pandemic. Most providers will tell you that the number of individuals experiencing homelessness dramatically increased in 2021. The Metro Denver Homeless Initiative conducts a point-in-time survey of people experiencing homelessness. In February 2020, 1,273 people staying in shelters who were experiencing homelessness for the first time. In February 2021, the number doubled to 2,530, illustrating the devastating impacts of COVID-19 on the stability of our neighbors. This is a bill that we really need, and I am asking for an aye vote.
Representative Tipper.
Thank you, and I just wanted to add, the existing tax credit is 25%. So if you give $100, you can claim a tax credit of $25. That's all right. What is particularly compelling about this bill is the recognition that rural communities still, have these issues, but they don't have as many resources. So we increase the tax credit to 30% for our rural communities. And then I had a question whether or not this touches current enterprise zones, changes them. It does not, so just so you know that. And with that, we ask for your support.
Further discussion. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to get up and talk about this bill because I have a son who has serious mental illness, and he has been homeless. And when he was out on the street, he experienced incredible vitriol directed at him. He was beaten by college students on University Hill. And I think it's incumbent on us to do everything that we can to put resources into solving both our homeless situation and our mental health care funding and availability, but also to get ordinary people who maybe have no experience with this themselves, who haven't had a person in their life who ended up living on the streets, but to invite them by incentivizing them to have some compassion and maybe to direct some of the money that they want to devote to charities to this particular issue, because real people are really suffering out on the street, and many through no fault of their own. So I would encourage a yes vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1083? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1083 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1083 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to HCR 221005.
HCR 1005 by Representatives Weissman and Van Winkle, also Senators Gardner and Fields, submitting to the registered electors of the state of Colorado an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the judges of the newly created 23rd Judicial District, and in connection therewith directing the governor to designate judges from the 18th Judicial District to serve the remainder of their terms in the 23rd Judicial District, and requiring a judge so designated to establish residency within the 23rd Judicial District.
I think Representative Van Winkle wanted to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Concurrent Resolution 5, and there is no committee report.
To the resolution.
Oh, 1005, my apologies. I move House Concurrent Resolution 1005, and there's no committee report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, if you recall, Representative Weissman, Chair of Judiciary, and myself stood before you in the year 2020. We rushed a bill through before actually COVID hit the state of Colorado. And what that bill did is, for the first time in nearly 60 years, it created a brand new judicial district, the 23rd Judicial District in Colorado, and it centers it in Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties, separating Arapahoe County to be the lone county in the 18th Judicial District. What this concurrent resolution does is it sends to the voters a question that honors the intent of that 2020 bill and aims to create a seamless transition to this new judicial district. Now, staff issues can be handled by Chief Judge Amico and the leaders of Judicial District 18. They can move staff around, but judges are a completely different issue. Judges are constitutional officers, and they can't simply be reassigned from one place to another. The law currently has no sufficient mechanism for assigning or appointing judges to a brand new judicial district from another judicial district. And so what this does is it asks the people of Colorado if simply we can, if judges can be moved from the 18th Judicial District to this new 23rd Judicial District. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I ask for an aye vote on this resolution being sent to the voters of Colorado.
Thank you, Representative Van Winkle. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Van Winkle stated the case very well. Not a whole lot to add to that. I just want to emphasize two things. One is that this is about continuity. We both pledged to the county commissioners and other leaders in our counties, which are right now the two big anchor counties of the 18th, that we would stay involved in this process subsequent to this legislature's passage of the bill in 2020 and be prepared to take such measures as might be found to be necessary for a smooth transition for everybody involved. This is one of those measures, as Rep. Van Winkle said, because there are constitutional provisions about judgeships. We need to invite the voters of the state to weigh in here and hopefully pass this. Because we need to do that, we thought it was very important, as we did with the 2020 bill, for this to be bipartisan and bicameral, and you will see that that is the case. So this is in furtherance of a smooth transition. The other thing I want to emphasize is just how narrow this is. We don't change any other provisions about how judgeships work, the nominating commission process, gubernatorial appointment, retention or non-retention elections, depending on the preference of the voters. We want to respect all of that, and this transition mechanism is really one time in nature around November 24, January 25, as the transition from the 18th to the new 18th and the 23rd is going into effect, has no effect after that time. We ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion on HCR 1005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of HCR 1005. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. HCR 1005 is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 221347.
House Bill 1347 by Representative Doherty, also Senator Rodriguez, concerning workers' compensation and in connection therewith, increasing funeral benefits, allowing for advanced mileage expense payments, addressing the payment of scheduled ratings, and requiring reporting of certain active medical treatments.
Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1347.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill does four things. It raises the funeral and burial expense benefit cap up to $12,500. When traveling over 100 miles road trip, it allows injured workers the ability to receive advance payment for mileage expenses. It requires insurance carriers to pay the highest amount when the schedule rating results in more compensation to the injured worker than the whole person impairment rating. And it also, if a med-only claim results in active medical treatment for 6 months or more, it has a reporting requirement to the state. So I believe that this legislation provides meaningful support while also reducing unnecessary litigation and improving the reporting of on-the-job injuries, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1347? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1347. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1347 is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 157.
Senate Bill 157 by Senators Holbert and Fenberg, also Representatives Hooton and Van Winkle, concerning the enforcement of laws relating to unfair business practices committed by regulated persons.
Representative Hooton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 157 with a favorable recommendation.
In the committee report.
And the committee report.
And the Business Affairs and Labor Report.
And the Business Affairs and Labor Report.
Thank you. To the Business Affairs and Labor Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee did accept an amendment that clarified that the licensees that are subject to this bill are licensed to specific property.
Is there any further discussion on the Business Affairs and Labor Report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Business Affairs and Labor Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Business Affairs and Labor Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Hooton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Representative Van Winkle is exhausted by all the activity that he's had at the well this morning. Anyway, members, what this bill does is it allows complainants who have filed an investigation with a regulatory body that licensed them, it allows them to, if the regulatory body has denied the request for an investigation, it allows them to then go to their district attorney or the attorney general's office to file the complaint with them. That would, and there are two criteria, or actually, there are two conditions that would qualify them. One would be a legitimate $20,000 potential loss, and the other would be two parties filing the complaint together. So, and if the AG's office or a DA's office agrees to investigate, then this would trigger an interagency agreement between the regulatory body and either one of these investigatory bodies.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't need to repeat anything. Thank you to Representative Hooton for doing a very good, diligent job explaining exactly what this bill does. I will add that in addition to the parameters, we don't actually view this as will be used tremendously often by the people of Colorado, but it is an important option for the people of Colorado in the case of a credible complaint that needs addressed, to have this second option. Simply, it's a very narrow info sharing bill that allows an attorney general or district attorney to get their hands on information that's already been discovered and already is out there. So I ask for a yes vote on this. It's a very good consumer support bill, and I ask for a yes vote.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 157? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 157 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate Bill 157 as amended is passed. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to Senate Bill 49.
Senate Bill 49 by Senators Fields and Gardner, also Representatives Tipper and Carver, concerning updating the Victim Rights Act.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move Senate Bill 49 and the judicial report.
Thank you, Representative Carver. To the Judiciary Report. Representative Tipper.
Thank you. I'm back. This is my last and final act today. In Judiciary, so just by way of background, this bill is an update to the Victim Rights Act. So we've made several updates to different criminal provisions and criminal statutes, but we haven't really done an overhaul of the Victim Rights Act. So that's what this bill does. One of the hardest parts to negotiate had to do with what are called Rule 17 subpoenas. So subpoenas that are issued to healthcare providers for the medical records of a victim. Those could be mental health records, or they could be x-rays of injuries. And the reason you would do that, for example, is you would want to prove harm, for example, prove serious bodily injury. Long story short, with tremendous work by the Public Defender's Office, the victim rights groups, and the DAs, everyone came to an agreement on the language on how those subpoenas, the procedure. So we moved an amendment to do that, and then we also had some clarifying language that changed references to statutory sites. Asked for a yes vote on the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Judiciary Committee report passes. To the bill, Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Victims' Rights Act under Colorado law is intended to assure that victims' voices are heard at the various stages of the criminal justice system. So at bond hearings, during the trial, during sentencing, at parole, etc. And so this bill is to update and strengthen those rights of crime victims to be notified, as well as have an opportunity to voice their concerns, their views at the different parts of our criminal justice system. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 49? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 49. All those in favor, as amended, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 49 as amended passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1301.
House Bill 1301 by Representative Soper and Roberts, concerning the treatment of controlled environment agricultural facilities for property tax purposes.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1301 and the House Transportation and Local Government Committee report.
Thank you, Representative Soper. To the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Transportation and Local Government Committee, we added two amendments. These were amendments that were asked for by the Assessors Association to clarify a couple of different things. One would be that it will only be the personal property that will receive the ag personal property status. The land in the building will still be treated as all other agriculture, which is currently the tax treatment that greenhouses and nurseries currently have, and that respects the work of previous legislatures and a Supreme Court case. Then along with this, we added the word hemp back in. We also define hydroponics, and we described that the ag personal property has to be hydroponic. It has to be for the planting, growing, and harvesting of crops commercially with the intent of making a profit, that it's the sole use of the controlled environment agricultural facility. And that's the amendment. The second amendment was a typo correction.
Is there any further discussion on the Transportation and Local Government Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Want to take the lead?
The Transportation and Local Government Committee report passes. To the bill. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to be on this bill with Representative Roberts. We share something in common, and that's a passion for Colorado agriculture and for water conservation. What this bill does is it says that the equipment that you're using for planting, growing, or harvesting crops, whether indoors or outdoors, should have the same tax treatment, and that would be as agricultural personal property, meaning it wouldn't be taxed. The building still will be taxed at that full commercial rate as all other agriculture. The land in the building will receive that. And then we go ahead and define that it's hydroponics, because we also want to see that nexus to the land through the land's water. And it's very important that as we're talking hydroponics, we can save water and only use 1/10 of the water, for example, to grow lettuce here in Colorado. A controlled environment agricultural facility is important on multiple fronts as we look to the future and what the future may look like here in Colorado. It will never overtake conventional agriculture, but will always be a supplement to conventional agriculture. It allows farmers to innovate rather than dying. If you think about the future, we may have pandemics, we may have wars, things that disrupt the supply chain, and the ability to grow fresh produce and crops indoor year-round means that in the middle of winter, like we still are right now, or entering spring, when we don't have those fresh green crops, we can actually still have that. So it's good for human health. It's good to be able to supplement for feed to cattle, like I have a constituent in Gateway. Through over-appropriation of the Dolores or drought or climate change, depending on the analysis, they just haven't had the water to be able to grow the hay to feed the herd of cattle that it takes to stay on his family's ranch. So he looked over to eastern Utah and he said, I'm going to try a controlled environment agricultural facility and grow barley and other hay. And now he grows 9,000 pounds a week and is able to supplement that this time of year. His cows look better, it has a unique marbling, so it's had some good effects. But the most important effect is that this family ranch, they're able to stay in production. They're able to stay in traditional agriculture by this innovation. And so we would like to be able to have a tax treatment that treats the indoor and outdoor the same as far as growing, planting, or harvesting of the crops. It's really an investment in Colorado agriculture is what these farmers are making. It still is agriculture and looks like agriculture. I'll let Representative Roberts talk about an environmental growth operation that's in his district.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Soper, for all of your work on this bill. I can't thank you enough for getting this bill to a really great place where we are today. Rep. Soper and I share the fact that separate constituents reached out to us asking for us to take a look at this at the legislature. And so when we got to work, we knew that this was going to be a challenging bill, but I think one that's worth doing, because there's a lot of talk down here at this podium and in other places in this building about supporting agriculture. This is a bill that's actually going to do that, because what we're doing here is we are giving farmers and ranchers who are trying to innovate and business owners who are trying to innovate the same tax treatment that current traditional agriculture receives. And that's going to be beneficial in all of our districts, I believe, because what that's going to mean is that we can start growing agricultural products in many parts of the state that don't really have that opportunity right now, at least for the types of crops like fresh lettuce being grown in Garfield County, in a part of the state where lettuce normally wouldn't be able to grow. And they're doing it in a way that saves significant amounts of water, and they're doing it on a scale that's creating good paying full-time jobs in that community, and we're growing our Colorado food here in Colorado. This is a bill that promotes innovation, allows people to be entrepreneurs, but also a bill that supports our one of our most important industries in Colorado, which is our agricultural industry. So with that, I would ask for an aye vote and thank my colleague for his work and partnership on this bill.
Representative Soper.
Just 1 second. I also wanted to mention it has the support of the Farm Bureau, the Colorado Department of Agriculture, Conservation Colorado, the Grand Junction Chamber of Commerce, the Orchard Mesa Irrigation District, and the Cattlemen's Association.
And Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one final thanks to the county assessors. They're the ones that are going to be implementing this on the ground. I want to thank them for their partnership in helping us get this bill to a technically good place. They are neutral on the bill and have been great partners in this effort.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the bill sponsors for an absolutely amazing bill that innovates and takes agriculture to the next level. And I'm going to tell my colleagues in the chamber why this is so important. The reason this is so important is because our environments are changing. The harshness of our environments for growing crops outdoors is changing. And this particular legislation allows for innovation to mitigate the environmental impacts of the crops that are grown in Colorado. And I would argue that maybe it doesn't go far enough. This is absolutely necessary to continue this innovation because the United States of America needs to continue to feed everybody in this country and also export all around the world. And this particular legislation builds the capacity to do that, to keep food in the grocery stores and keep our families fed. Thank you to the bill sponsors, and I'm an absolute strong supporter of this.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1301? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1301 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1301 as amended is passed. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
House will come back to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report has under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1010 as amended, 1083 as amended, 1301 as amended, 1304 as amended, 1309 as amended, 1317 as amended, 1347. House Concurrent Resolution 1005 passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 49 as amended, 157 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Basenecker. Thank you, Representative Basenecker. The motion before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that as much as we recognized Van Winkle hat trick of a couple days ago and this morning, I think we should recognize the Representative Tipper hat trick of today, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Good job, Tipper. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. All right, please close the machine. All right, Representative Tipper, good job today on the hat trick with 42 aye votes, 22 no votes, and 1 excuse. The report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Majority Leader Eskar. Do we have a calendar? Oh, wait. Sorry. Message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate
Message
has
from the
passed.
Senate will be buried in the journal. Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we proceed out of order to request for conference committees.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for requests of conference committees. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 34.
Senate Bill 34 by Senators Kolker and Priola, also Representatives Byrd and Sandridge, concerning measures to counteract the filing of fraudulent business documents with the Secretary of State.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Senate did not concur on the House amendments to Senate Bill 34 and requested a conference committee. I move that the conference committee on Senate Bill 34 be granted permission to go beyond the scope of differences between the two houses.
Is there any further discussion? It's a proper motion. You have heard the motion. Members, this is a recorded vote. See no further discussion. Mr. Shebel, please remember the question is to go beyond the scope of Senate Bill, beyond the scope of the differences between the two houses for Senate Bill 34. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sorry, I screwed up the order. Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. Please close the machine. With 43 aye votes, 21 no votes, and 1 excuse, permission is granted for the Conference Committee on Senate Bill 34 to go beyond the scope of the difference between the two houses. House conferees are Representative Byrd, Chair, Representative Snyder, and Representative Sandridge. Majority Leader Eskar.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend House Rule 36 for immediate consideration of the conference committee report on House Bill 1329.
Members, you have heard the motion. See no objection. The motion to members, you've heard the motion. Is there any objection to suspending the rules? Seeing none, the motion to suspend the rules is adopted. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1329.
House Bill 1329 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Hansen, concerning the provision for payment of the expenses of the executive, legislative, and judicial departments of the state of Colorado and of its agencies and institutions for and during the fiscal year beginning July 21st, 2022, except as otherwise noted.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of the first report of the first conference committee on House Bill 1329.
That is a proper motion. Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, 1329 is our long bill. We moved the long bill through the House, adopted 12 of your amendments, increasing total operating appropriations by a total of $63 million, but only $8.7 million of that was general fund. The Senate retained 11 of those 12 amendments, and then adopted an additional 10 amendments, which increased operating appropriations by $522 million general fund. It was an extraordinary increase in the amount of money and amount of appropriations for next year, and certainly put us out of balance with our original budget. As the conference committee met yesterday, we did adopt the House, the re-engrossed version of the bill, which meant we started with those adopted 12 amendments. I want to give you a quick recap of what was adopted through conference committee, as well as a highlight of some of the technical amendments that we adopted. We did add $1.5 million for the Tony Gramsci Youth Services Program, $1 million for Wolf Reintroduction and Management, $500,000 general fund, in addition to the $500,000 already there for the Collaborative Performance Management Program, another $500,000 for the Eviction Legal Defense Fund, $200,000 for the Court-Appointed Special Advocates CASA program, $100,000 for CSU's Ag Next Climate Change program, $75,000 for the Agricultural Leadership program, and $75,000 for beef sticks. We also restored 4 of the Senate amendments. We did add a total of $1 million, or an additional $500,000 for prenatal testing. We did correct an appropriations problem in the district attorneys, for the district attorneys, implementing House Bill 21-1280 with an additional $600,000. We did add $250,000 to the Immigration Legal Defense Fund, and $200,000 for mental health programs in rural Colorado. In addition, we did some technical cleanup. We ended up swapping out general fund with federal fund for the Digital Transformation Initiative and IT capital project. It put several of our institutions of higher education at risk of losing their enterprise status, so we made that swap. We did also create some spending flexibility for the manufactured building programs in DOLA. We did roll forward authority on the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and then we made a number of technical corrections that our staff brought forward to us that they had caught in further examination of the proposed long bill. I'm very pleased to tell you that I think your input was valuable. We are grateful for your thoughts. I again encourage you to engage early in the process, even for next year as we start looking forward. We take your ideas very seriously, your hopes, the recognition of different needs in our state departments, in our state spending. Please feel free to come knock on my door, certainly as JBC, in the coming years. But at this point, I urge an aye vote on the conference committee report.
Thank you, Representative McCluskey. Minority Leader McKean.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and thank you for all your work, really, truly, to the JBC. And getting to you early, I know, is important, so I'll just tell you now that I would like to make sure that we have a 3% increase for our state troopers next year. Folks, I'm not going to say I don't often come down here on third readings, but this isn't even a third reading. This is a concurrence, consideration of a conference committee report. We have a lot of institutional rules here in our body, in our legislative body, and one of those that we saw last year was when the House adopts an amendment to the budget, and we know what happens. It goes to the Senate, it gets stripped off. Or if it gets adopted in the Senate, it gets stripped off when it comes here. If it's adopted in both houses, then by and large, that's an amendment that speaks for the people of the state of Colorado. The amendment that was adopted in both houses this year was a 3% pay increase for our line level state troopers. It was adopted in the House. The budget went to the Senate. It was stripped off, but it was put back on in the Senate. And in conference committee, it was rejected. And I think that's wrong. I don't think it's just wrong that it could be rejected. I think it's wrong that when we have the 100 members of the state legislature speaking as a majority in both bodies that say this is something we want to do, we should find a way to do it. And when we talk about numbers like $1 million for wolf reintroduction and management, when we talk about some of the other numbers in here, $500,000 for the Eviction Legal Defense Fund, when we talk about some of the smattering of numbers that we see here in the things that were adopted, and yet we cannot fund $2.3 million for our state troopers, I think it's wrong. And the reason why I really would like to bend your ear is because you know what discussion is going on in this building right now. And without veering too far away from the budget, I'll just say that there are people who need to know that when they dial 911 in Haxton, somebody can show up to their door. When they call and need help in Kim, Colorado, somebody can come to their door. If we are ever going to talk about what the rural-urban divide looks like, this is it. In a lot of places in this state, in Meeker, Colorado, in Dove Creek, these are the people who are going to come and respond to you. This is the function of government, is public safety. And in a year when we're seeing 11.5% increase in inflation, and we can't find an additional 3% to give to our troopers, shame on us. As a body, how can we look anyone in the eye and say we're doing our job? We're doing the job of government. No, we're doing the job of making sure that wolves can be reintroduced. We're making sure that we can do all of these other jobs when we talk about the core function of government. The core function of government. One of those most vital things, especially in a year when crime is rampant, is public safety. How on earth is it that we have not found $2.3 million to help merely get our state troopers to the median level of their salary range? We fought for that amendment here. We sent it to the Senate. They fought for that amendment there. That means something. It means that we spoke as a body. As often as we get upset with the first floor, sending their emissaries up here to tell us what to do, what we actually did was spoke with our voices to tell JBC what we wanted them to do. Now, they're going to study this issue. They're going to come back next year. Next year, I can't tell you what inflation will look like, but I bet you it's going to be worse. Next year, with the raise that was in the budget, our troopers are going to be moving backwards. Next year, we may have lost more than the 25% of manpower that our state troopers have lost because we've made it harder to do the job of being a police officer in Colorado. This was something we could do. It was something we should have done, and we didn't do it. I appreciate your work, but I'm passionate about this because this isn't right.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Leader McKean. I'll just say ditto to all of that because there was actually, in addition to that amendment, there was another amendment that passed this body overwhelmingly. It went to the Senate. The Senate passed it overwhelmingly because there is an immediate drug problem facing our youth in Colorado. It is a rising drug problem harming our kids that immediately is threatening the health and safety of Colorado citizens right now. And the JBC, exactly like was just said with the previous speaker, overruled both the House and the Senate, which passed this amendment overwhelmingly and said bring a bill next year. This is an immediate crisis facing the people of Colorado right now, especially our youth. I ask for a no vote on the on the conference committee report and ask the JBC to please honor the amendments that passed in both the House and the Senate.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by certainly honoring the voice of this body and the voice of the Senate and the amendment that was brought forward. The Joint Budget Committee spends months reviewing specific requests from the governor as part of his proposal, but also exploring our own. We spend a lot of time with DPA talking about compensation across all state departments. We heard from a number of departments about critical needs, workforce retention, recruiting and retention challenges. There were included in the long bill targeted rate adjustments to a small handful of specific job classifications. For our troopers, we did make an investment in overtime in FTE, specifically for the Capitol Complex, but in part because we were pulling troopers away from their jobs elsewhere when there was need here. Every state employee is receiving a 3%, across the board 3% increase this year. And I'm thrilled to say our troopers are benefiting from that increase. As I read to you at the well, over the past 6-7 years, our troopers have received significantly larger increases than other state employees. I absolutely raise up their hard work, their dedication, the challenges we are facing in recruiting and retention. But making decisions around compensation for this state on the fly through a budget amendment is not responsible governance. What your JBC has proposed to do on an accelerated timeline is an extensive RFI and analysis of all post-certified positions in the state, not just our troopers. We are asking that members of DOC and CPW be considered as part of that analysis. I am happy to share with you that request, that RFI, and can go through it in detail. But it will look at all of the qualifications, training, and experience for positions in these agencies. We will look at current recruiting, retention, and turnover data for these positions. We are expediting the analysis not for next year's budget, but for August of this year, so that when the JBC meets in September, we can take a look at what the compensation structure is for all of these positions, ensuring that we don't run into inequities or compression, making sure that we are looking at a very critical analysis, a thorough analysis of what the right approach may be to shore up both our troopers as well as the other positions, like positions throughout the state that may also deserve consideration. I invite all of you to join us in September to consider what our steps may be in September if we truly are facing a crisis in recruiting and retention. And again, that did not come forward through our analyses starting in November of 21 through the time we closed the long bill in March. We did not hear from DPS that we needed to increase trooper wages and salaries or benefits. We did not hear that specific request. That analysis did not come from the compensation study that was completed by DPA. I actually think and I'd love that what came forward was a vote of support, an amendment through the long bill that said these positions are critically important to this state. These people are critically important. We need to do more. Then let's do that, but let's do it in a very thoughtful and appropriate way. Again, I ask for an aye vote on the conference committee report.
Minority Leader McKean.
Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve here with you.
Honor to serve with you too, Representative Minority Leader McKean.
I absolutely agree with you, Representative McCluskey. I absolutely agree that we ought to do that study. We did that study. In fact, that's how we know that our troopers are not yet at the median range of their salary. So the challenge we come to is truly when we see the kinds of things that we see in our budget and we say, is this appropriate? Is this what we ought to be doing? I think for many of us, it comes down to, is that the role of government? And that's a sort of a 1-0 kind of question for a lot of us. This is. And more than ever before, we have a need to fund public safety. And more than ever before, we have a need to fund public safety where it matters the most, in the most rural parts of our state, where troopers, as I said before, but where I really, really want to dwell on it, might be the only person that can come show up to what you've got going on. On your worst day, that trooper might be the only person to be able to get to you in a timely manner. And if we don't have them, and we currently have 25% less of them, and if we are not an attractive place to work, we won't have them. And that means we can't do our job. Our job as government to protect the people of this state. I would move to reject a substitute motion, if you would, Mr. Speaker, to reject the conference committee report and organize a second conference committee.
That is a proper motion. Is there additional discussion on that motion? Seeing none, the question before us is the rejection of the first conference committee report for House Bill 1329 and to appoint a second conference committee for House Bill 1329. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Judah votes no. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Harrod votes no. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Lindsay votes no. We've been through this once before with Mullica. Last time it was 25, and I almost broke the gavel. What is Representative Mullica's position in this body? He's a whip. All right. Representative Mullica is excused with a $13 fine. With 24 aye votes, 39 no votes, and 2 excused, the motion to reject the first conference committee report and appoint a second conference committee for House Bill 1329 is lost. We are back to the underlying motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the first conference committee report for House Bill 1329. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Please close the machine. With 38 aye votes, 25 no votes, and 2 excused, the first conference committee report for House Bill 1329 is adopted. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1329 as amended by the conference committee report.
The question before us is the adoption or the repassage of House Bill 1329 as amended by the first conference committee report. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Judah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Judah votes yes. Representative Harrod, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Harrod votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Please close the machine. With 39 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 2 excused, House Bill 1329 is repassed as amended. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until Monday, April 18th.
What about tomorrow?
I mean, if y'all want to come back tomorrow, I can find some work for us to do.
Just joking.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. See no objection. The balance of the calendar will be laid over until Monday, April 18th. 18th. That brings us to announcements and introductions. Representative Exum will replace Representative Woodrow on State, Civic, and Military Affairs Committee only. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, we will start right away, so please head on over there.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, remember it's finance, and as with the previous committee, we will be meeting right away. So I'll see you in committee room 112 ASAP.
Representative A. Valdez.
All right, members of Energy and Environment, we will be beginning at 2:15 p.m. In the Old State Library in Energy and Environment.
Hold on one second. Representative Molka? Representative Molka.
Molka.
Welcome back. Welcome back. 25 plus 13. 25 plus 13 is $38. All right. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Business Affairs and Labor, same announcement as E&E. We're pushing till 2:15. 2:15 start for Business Affairs and Labor.
Representative McLaughlin.
You'll never guess what I'm going to say. 2:15 for education. Hooray!
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this actually is my favorite week of the year. It is the week that millions upon millions of people celebrate the Exodus. The truth that one does not have to live in bondage and suffering forever. There is always a way out, and there is always hope, there is always life. And so you will have found one of these on your desks. It is a demonstration of that truth, that one doesn't always have to live in that environment. And once you break through, then you find life and you bloom and flourish. And so I leave these with you and hope that you all celebrate, if you do celebrate this weekend, the joy of the Exodus, the joy of breaking from bondage and slavery into new life. And as always, you are loved and worthy, adored and amazing. Even you there in the back of the room fall into that category. Can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you, Representative Luck. And I'm not sure if you're talking about Molka, but he is loved very much. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess till later today.